Oh, we've got some background noise. Someone's got kids around, so make sure you mute, please. Kid'll give us the countdown when you start. You're live. All right, we're live, guys. We've got a pretty full panel today, which I appreciate. Guys, make sure you please mute your mic. I think Afshin is from your end. You're the only one unmuted, or Ami Chal. And Kirill will just remove anyone that's, or mute you guys if you've got any background noise. Kirill, I'm not sure who's got the background noise. Just make sure you take care of audio. Guys, pretty extraordinary circumstances. Stefano, I'm going to go to you very briefly, give us an update on what happened. But essentially, in brief, we've got senior military officials, commanders in Iran, and the IRGC, commander of the IRGC, the chief of staff of the armed forces. We've got the commander of a Qatam Al-Anbiya Central Headquarters. We've got the IRGC Air Force commander and 20 other senior members, all allegedly killed. Some of them have been confirmed by Iranian media. I've got multiple, at least 2 top Iranian nuclear scientists. And of course, we've got, I think, the biggest nuclear base, nuclear facility. The, I haven't got the name here.
Natanz.
Natanz, there it is, yep.
Yeah.
Natanz nuclear facility that was struck. Stefano, give us a quick overview on what we've seen.
Yeah, so, you kind of hit at the whole thing. I'm just going to kind of, from our app, the Sitrep Iran Daily Brief, we posted it, and I'm looking it over. You kind of hit the key figures, the IRGC, commander, the armed forces. So kind of for like our listeners who don't know, the equivalent of basically the American Joint Chief of Staff, he was killed, right? And then part of that, like the Araghchi was like the Iranian regular military, and then the IRGC, which is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. The head of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, General Salami, was killed. The other person that you said, the Qatar, that headquarters, that is the Iranian air defense. They're responsible for the entirety air defense. He was killed. And then the one that I think was very important, we mentioned this yesterday in this space, that I was highlighting, that if I'm Israel and I wanted to target somebody key, is that commander you mentioned of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Air Force, which is called the Aerospace Force. The reason why that's a key, and then the 20 senior commanders underneath him, the reason why that's key is the IRGC ASF. If Iran is going to retaliate, that's the command that's going to do it. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force are the ones that are responsible for the vast majority of Iranian drones that can reach into Israel, one-way attack UAVs. They also control the Al-Ghadir Missile Command, which is the ballistic missile force of Iran, right? And so the fact that Israel targeted them makes 100% sense, because they wanted to decapitate the ability of Iran to strike back from a command and control perspective, not necessarily from the ground. And then the air defense commander as well, and those people, is to enable Israeli operations inside of Iran. And I think it's important to highlight that still to this moment, we're getting videos from Iranians on the ground showing Israeli UAVs basically operating freely over parts of Iran, specifically Tabriz. So what we're seeing is Israel has a very freedom of maneuver, like a lot of leeway to operate in Iran without any real concerns either of the Iranian air defense assets or even their air force. Their air force looks like that they're dispersing. They're not trying to defend, they're trying to protect them. And so now we're seeing Israeli UAVs basically openly flying. And some of the areas that have been targeted besides Natanz, which you highlighted, the enrichment facility, but the command centers, the bases, and then missile sites. Again, those are key targets. We saw one, again, I said Tabriz. We also saw reports of Kermanshah, I believe it was, which is a key ballistic missile site. And so that's the thing. But it's not only Israeli airstrikes that have been doing this, and cruise missile strikes, and deep strikes. The Israel also released video showing Israeli special forces and Mossad, prior to the operation happening, operating inside of Iran and doing similar to what we kind of saw what a Ukraine does into Russia, a similar model. Their operatives go in, launch small UAVs, target key sites like air defense, ballistic missiles, cruise missiles. Once that happened, then what the Israelis did, the first wave was targeting, it looks like, senior leaders. That's why we saw a lot of apartments being hit. They were trying to decapitate. And then from there, we saw, I think right now there's up to 5 waves, if not 6 waves of strikes that the Israelis have done. And now it looks like once the leadership was decapitated, now they're going to more of those hardened structures that the Iranians just can't move around or pull out, such as storage sites, underground facilities, Natanz. The one to really look into is if they attack Bashir. There was some reporting there. I haven't gotten really an update, but that's kind of an overview of what happened since 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, U.S. And right now it's, we've only been 14 hours since this, and Israel has achieved enormous amount of success.
One more question, Stefano, before I go to the panel as well. Why do you think Fordo and Isfahan and Bushehr have not been targeted? These are other nuclear facilities, the other major ones.
That's an interesting question. I don't know if there's kind of a concern from a nuclear, I'm not a nuclear energy expert. I know that's somebody we had in the previous space, Mark Nelson, who was kind of talking about that. I don't know if there's something like that, or if Israel just has higher priorities in the targeting. It could be that Natanz was a priority because it does have a very deep-seated underground facility that required a lot more precision strikes. And then probably because of that, the Iranians also had a lot of air defense assets. So there's probably a lot of conversations internally. But the thing that you have to analyze it is those facilities aren't going anywhere. They're there. They're wide open. I mean, the Iranians can't just move it around. And so the Israelis, though, one of the things you have to consider is, unlike the United States, Israel does not have perpetual, consistent, persistent airstrike capabilities that they can launch over Iran. That's why we're using the terms waves. And so what I think the Israelis are doing is trying to target key facilities and key targets. And the number one were personnel and those that can move around. Right. And then if there's a window of opportunity, that's probably why Natanz might have been struck, because there was a window of opportunity that they leveraged. Those facilities can be targeted. But to be honest, they're not going anywhere. And that might be Israel's way of holding Iran and saying, hey, it could be a negotiation tactic for us. If you don't agree to these terms, we can strike these in a moment's notice. But that's just me speculating.
So I've got here a report, and I'm going to go to Yoel. Yoel, I think it's Manny from the Times of Israel that said there's, as you said, Stefano, Israel built, or Mossad built, explosive drone bases in Iran for this operation, similar to what Ukraine did in Russia, which have been very successful and very alarming as well from a geopolitical perspective. They were used to strike ballistic missile launchers at a base near Tehran, preventing Iran from firing projectiles at Israel as the strikes began. So that's number one. Number two, again, reports that vehicles were seen carrying weapon systems smuggled into Iran, obviously by Mossad, and they took out Iranian air defenses, giving Israel, as you said again, Stefano, air supremacy and freedom of action over Iran. And number three, covert efforts, again, by Mossad's commandos this time, deploying precision missiles near anti-aircraft sites in central Iran. So this seems significantly more than the 200 jets, 300 bombs on 100 plus targets that were initially reported, Yoel. Can you expand on these reports? Have they been verified? And what do they mean in terms of Israel's capabilities and the severity of this attack?
Hey, Mario, thank you for having us on. The drone attack is actually really fascinating. And I don't think it's a surprise to anyone. I think maybe a year ago, Ahmadinejad, the former president of Iran, said that he set up aspiring to go after the Mossad that were operating in Iran, only for him to discover the entire ring was orchestrated by the Mossad themselves and completely run by Mossad operatives. That was already from a few years ago, and he said that he came forward that a year ago. To understand the capacity that Israel's operating in Iran on the ground, the major reason why Israel's so successful is because so many dissidents, the majority of Iranians, want nothing to do with the Ayatollahs and the fascist regime there. So Israel has a unique asset on the ground, as opposed to, let's say, when it comes to Gaza and Hamas, and we're not talking about that, where the people on the ground don't oppose Hamas as much as people on the ground in Iran oppose the government there. So that's Israel's greatest advantage. Also, Israel's been very good at being able to bring things in and out of Iran. If you recall, maybe, I don't remember many years, maybe 6 years ago or so, Israel did a major operation and took huge amounts of evidence of them building the nuclear facilities and everything that they were doing. When it was underground, everything was bolted in the middle of the night, and they were able to get out there with dozens of people and all kinds of documents that was able to give evidence of what they're doing there on the ground. So Israel's strength in Iran is very, very strong. And that's because there's a strong connection between the people of Israel and the people of Iran that both want freedom.
Mario, if I could just jump in for just
go ahead,
Stefano. We'll go to breaking news that I know we'll go to Kavok, but I just wanted to share this, that according to the Iranian Atomic Energy Organization of Iran, they're claiming that there is a radioactive leak inside of because of the Natanz strike.
So there is a leak has been confirmed now?
That's per the Iranian Atomic Energy Atomic Energy Organization of Iran. They're the ones that are claiming this. That kind of broke through, but I'll look into it to see if there's more information on this.
Yeah, of course. If you can send it to the team as well in the background, that would be great, Stefano. I appreciate it. Kavok, before any specific questions, initial response to this attack?
Actually, Iran stands now in front of two options, one of which is to retaliate in a calculated manner, but this will lead into a prolonged war in the region. And I think this is, again, not in the interest of Iran to have a long-term conflict that could go out of hand at any moment, which could lead, of course, into the direct intervention of the United States, or massive retaliation against Israel, which will definitely lead into an American intervention. However, when I read and watch the initial reports and the video reportages, it seems that the Iranian side was caught off guard. Despite that everybody expected strikes from the Israeli side against Iran, but the type of the operation that Israel conducted, which was a mixture of intelligence, cyber, and military operation inside Iran, this has led into some sort of confusion. It's quite clear that the air defenses of Iran were either neutralized or there was a cyber attack against them. Something happened that the Israelis have now dominance over the skies of Iran. It's very strange, in my opinion, that the Iranians aren't repelling this type of attacks. And it's really a bad image for Iran itself and whatever technology they're using in this case. Now, this was not at all surprising, at least for me, because Iran in the past 1.5 years, especially after October 7, it had passed through several experiences and sequences of events. For example, they have lost the escalatory dominance, whether in Lebanon or in Gaza. They have lost the deterrence, especially in Lebanon. Remember, before October 7, if you bomb Dahiya, which is the suburbs of Beirut, the equation was we will bomb Tel Aviv. But then the entire assassination of the leadership of Hezbollah happened, and this has eliminated and decapitated the leadership of Hezbollah. And in my opinion, the response was not to the extent that they could recalibrate the situation again in the region. So Israel used this opportunity to push further assassinations inside Iran, for example, killing Hamas officials. And then the regime change war happened in Syria, and I think this was the major blow to what used to be called the axis of resistance. And this has led that Israel now can operate over the Syrian skies without any resistance. That's why they can now use the Syrian skies as well to strike inside the Iranian territories. One last thing, this also shows, in my opinion, these attacks, that there wasn't really a rift between Trump and Netanyahu. This was probably a smokescreen from both sides in order to give the impression that the Americans are not going to greenlight an attack against them. And they have used this, let's say, propaganda or the smokescreen that they created in the press to give a false illusion to the Iranians that such a strike is not possible. And something like this, they did it also with Assad after 2018. They give him the false impression that the regime change war was over and he emerged victorious, and they came back afterwards after 4 or 5 years and they eliminated him. So I think this is all what we know at the current moment. We have to also wait and see for the Iranian response, and after that we can evaluate.
Kirvok and Afshin, now go to Afshin and Kirvok again. One last question for you as well. Afshin, how can Iran respond? What are the various options they have on the table? You're muted, by the way, and just kind of, obviously I'm talking about a direct response on Israel through their proxies, which have been annihilated over the last 12 months, and of course, trying to interfere in oil shipping lanes.
Yeah, I'm speaking to you 43 miles away from the coastline.
Afshin, we'll get back to you. Kirvok, I'll let you answer this question while we fix Afshin's audio. We can't hear you at all, Afshin, not sure what's happening. So Kirill will fix your audio. Kirvok, just in the meantime, if you can answer that question as well, please.
Could you please repeat the question? Excuse me.
What are the various options that Iran has on the table in terms of response?
Actually, for the moment, I think they have several options, especially in the Strait of Hormuz, and blocking the routes, the maritime routes, for example, and also firing missiles against.
That might be better.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, Kirvok, I'll let you finish. We'll go back to you, Afshin, to answer that question.
Yeah, Iranians have multiple, of course, options, but it all depends on the damage that the Israelis have inflicted. We really don't know how much damage they have inflicted yet. We have to evaluate it, because Iranians had the options to block the Strait of Hormuz, to strike the American assets in the Gulf countries, but the Gulf countries, they have all distanced themselves from this. They said, we condemn it, we don't want to endorse these attacks against us. And I think Iranians are not suicidal enough to go against American assets in the Gulf countries. This is more like a rhetoric that we will strike American bases in the region. But the truth of the matter is, I think Iranians will try to strike Israel in a calculated manner, but this is the trap that the Israelis are setting for them, which is a prolonged war, which sooner or later will go out of hand. So Iranians do not have an option now. I think that this is a decisive war. This is a strategic war. They can go full scale, let's say, retaliation or calculated escalation, but in the end, the decision is made. It's quite clear after October 7 by the US and Israel to eliminate any, let's say, resistance to their dominance over the region. So Iranians are in front of a very difficult situation, in my opinion.
Exactly, Afshin. Like, I don't know what options Iran has other than just a full-scale response, more than we've seen last year. Otherwise, they do seem very weak to their people.
Absolutely, and that's incredibly important. Kavork's point is well taken about the intelligence failures, and Stefano's about this news breaking while we're on this stream that radioactivity has been detected in Natanz shows whether questions how successful Israel can say this is. I should say Israel has attacked the state welfare organization, helping disabled people, people in need of care, but of course that'll go by the by. But it does relate to how civic society in Iran will see this as a gross failure upon failures, as is in mainstream media call them proxies. They're not Iranian proxies, Lebanese resistance, nor the other ones, but clearly they're allies, and they've all been beaten. What we were presumably saying, what you were saying, Mario, on this stream about when Lebanon was being bombed by Israel, Sheikh Nasrallah and Hezbollah were just knocked out. Also, speaking to you, I mean, I've interviewed Ahmadinejad in the presidential palace. I know the groundswell of opinion from those days, and certainly now it will be one of how on earth, when for all the fact that Trump may have been in on the attack, you can't say Trump didn't give enough warning that something was going to happen. You didn't need to look at the pizza index at Domino's around the Pentagon to see the increase in orders and the evacuation of personnel from Abu Dhabi, the country I'm speaking to you from, the capital there, the Al Dhafra Air Base, let alone the base is the biggest US base in this region in Qatar. So how on earth were all these Iranian military personnel just sleeping in their apartments waiting for the Israeli bombs to attack? As to your question, and as to the answer to your question, clearly, I mean, if it was an Assad-like situation, you'd expect the regime to flee, presumably something that UL would expect. It has been a complete disaster so far. The reason Saudi Arabia, the UAE, the GCC has condemned this is, of course, not only because of the regional disability, but now, and intimations of which we're hearing from Natanz in real time of radioactivity, how it could hurt the environment in this region, and let alone what it means for the global economy. This will rebound to hit Western European economies in the most horrific way, who are already self-sanctioning for the war on Russia through Ukraine. What on earth is it going to do? Of course, the United States is a net exporter of oil, but when the Americans start seeing that their tax dollars, they've just Trump issued not only masses of ammunition, hellfire missiles and the big bombs to Israel in the past few months, he also gave American taxpayer money to Israel. And when ordinary Americans see the effect on the pump, when they're filling gas in their cars, let alone the fact that this winter, the impact on Western European countries already collapsing, Britain's GDP falling, new figures out in the past 48 hours, you can see what a complete catastrophe this has been. Eventually, Israel will have to be reined in. As to the response of Iran, there is no other response as far as Iran can. There is no other possible response, despite Trump on Truth Social saying Iran must not retaliate. Iran can, and this has even been said on Comcast Sky News, can either keep getting hit or it can hit back, but it has to be a massive hit back. Iran is terrified of the nuclear weapons of Israel. That is the fact.
All right, so essentially you said the two obvious options here. Afshin, by the way, I didn't know you were in Abu Dhabi. I just landed in Dubai yesterday, just before the airspace was closed.
I'm in Dubai.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, perfect. I think we're close by. You can see my background. So it'll be good to meet in person, maybe do a quick in-person interview on this. Just one other question. You said, you know, Iran has two options. One is to keep getting hit. The other one is to hit back strongly. Questions on each option. Number one is, how's that even a possibility to keep getting hit? Obviously, Israel said this is a long-term operation. I think they said up to 2 weeks. And the other one, if they have to hit back, which seems like the only option. Now, they're definitely in a corner. Last year, they had the ability to kind of respond in a certain way, limit their response to make sure the retaliation is limited. Both sides didn't want to escalate. But it seems now Israel's crossed all red lines, has escalated to a pretty extraordinary level, considering the commanders that were killed in these attacks. Iran will have to respond. I think you'll agree. So how can Iran respond? What options does it have?
I mean, all these personnel are replaceable. There's no problem about all these individuals, no matter whether they're the head of the IRGC. Remember Soleimani. It doesn't really matter about that. The response, clearly the obvious one, which beats nuclear weapons, arguably, is to shut down the Straits of Hormuz and crash the global economy, because any nuclear response from Israel would just further exacerbate things. It's a kind of maximum strategy. There is no deterrent, it seems, that Iran has. For so many years, Iran had a deterrent. It could do that to the Straits of Hormuz. It could tell its allies in different regions to do something. Clearly, Israel feels there is no deterrent at all. It can go at whim. It's bombing right now, as far as I understand it. So it is shocking the Iranian people, and the Iranian people clearly care about the genocide in Gaza, most important of all, which is a huge cohesive element of Iranian society as they see Muslim and Christian Palestinians. The Jews of Iran, there are 20 synagogues in Iran. They don't have to be guarded, unlike the synagogues in, I'm just talking about Tehran. They don't have to even be guarded, unlike the synagogues of Israel, which have to be guarded. The Jewish community in Iran immediately said, attack Israel. So let's hope so many southern Tehran people and the poorer classes in parts of this country of 1.6 million square kilometers will be saying, do what the Jews of Iran tell Khamenei to do.
Brian, I'm going to go to you now. First, before asking a specific question, initial response when you first saw the attacks, and now that things are getting a bit clearer as to the extent of the attacks.
Well, you had this week, the historical decision or resolution from the International Atomic Energy Agency, which had already been sounding the alarm about the nuclear program since the latter part of 2023. And you saw increasingly alarming reports last year also about the amount of weapons-grade uranium, the acceleration in the enrichment. And you've seen for a lot of years that Iran has constantly said it wanted to destroy Israel. It's for Israel, it's a very existential threat. And they've had for many years also the focus on the nuclear program. You saw it with the capture of the nuclear archives from the heart of Iran all the way to Israel. You see now also the operation side with the drone base, the Mossad cells. These are things that have been in the workings for probably for years. And contrary to what some people might think, it's not just Israelis. It will probably be, for the most part, local Iranians who are dissatisfied with the regime there. Now, what my first response was, you could kind of feel the tension already building. You saw a lot of chatter the last couple of days and weeks. And for me, the big question was and still is, will Israel limit itself to, the decapitation of the armed forces and the nuclear program? Or will they go for a broader campaign, which will try to topple the regime altogether? Because when you look at public discourse within Israel, there are some schools of thought that say, well, you know what, we can take out the nuclear program, but when you still got the regime in place that still has that same ideology that wants to destroy you, that still has the expertise, because even though there have been some hits yesterday on some of the nuclear scientists, when you look at the entire program, you're talking about thousands of people involved in the nuclear program. And there are many schools of thought that say, if you want to, for long term, if you want to end the nuclear threat, it will not be enough to take out the nuclear installations, but you will have to go for decapitation of the regime itself. either indirectly, either partly, and that you embolden the people to take to the streets and finish the job themselves, or if you try to do it yourself as Israel. And that is still something that I'm trying to follow and that I don't have an answer to yet.
So that's an interesting point. And Maral and Vladimir, I want to get your thoughts on this. First, the operation is called Rising Line. The line, as far as I understand, is a symbol of Pahlavi's presidency before the revolution. It's also the symbol of the opposition movement, or probably one of the main symbols of the opposition movement. Also, Prince Reza Pahlavi, who I've interviewed and I hope to interview again, said Ali Khamenei, the foolish leader of the anti-Iranian regime of the Islamic Republic, has once again embroiled Iran in a war that is not between Iran and the Iranian nation, but between the Islamic Republic and Khamenei. My message to the military, law enforcement, and security forces is clear. This regime and its corrupt and incompetent leader do not value your lives or our Iran. Separate yourself from them and join the people. Essentially, the leader of the opposition party, or the symbolic leader of the opposition party, is calling for a regime change. Israel is indirectly calling for a regime change through that message and statements from Netanyahu earlier, a few months ago. Maral and Vladimir, what were your initial reaction to the attack? Obviously, you want to get your first thoughts, but also the possibility that this is more than just a strike on the military commanders and a strike on the nuclear facilities. Whoever would like to jump in first.
Okay, then I'll go first. So what was interesting that also CNN reported is that they had that there's U.S. officials saying that Israel maybe will push for regime change in Iran. And also what you said, it is interesting that the operation of the Israeli operation basically has this sort of symbolism connecting to the Shah movement. But there's also, I mean, we also saw the uprising, the Jina Amini uprising in Iran, like some years ago. So there's maybe an idea in Israel that basically if that these military operations will not be enough to get rid of the Islamic regime, and that they will continue to be a threat, even if they take out the nuclear facilities, even though that's very difficult. So maybe there are some ideas in Israel to do that, but I'm not sure how they're gonna how that's gonna work in practice. Like, what do they hope for? Are they gonna bring the Iranian opposition in exile to Iran itself, or do they just hope for like an internal Iranian regime implosion, that they, for instance, keep on the military pressure on not just hitting military facilities, but they're also, for instance, that they're going to step on attacks on the political leadership of Iran. So first, we saw that a lot of people from the IRGC were killed in these operations, but also, for instance, there was a targeted hit on Shamkhani, who was like an advisor to the supreme leader of Iran. So we have to see if Israel's really aiming for regime change, if we're going to see more, for instance, attacks on political Iranian leaders and people close to the supreme leader or the supreme leader itself. So we have to see what's going to happen in those few days. And also what is interesting to see how Iran is going to respond, because until now they just responded by drones. They haven't used their ballistic missile capabilities yet. There were some social media rumors that Israel also took out some of the ballistic missile capabilities, but we still have to wait how the Iranian response will be, and also what Iranian proxies will do in the region. Because, for instance, you have Hezbollah recently said that they're going to sort of stay out of this conflict unless Israel attacks them.
It's pretty extraordinary as well, Vladimir. That's pretty big news. When I saw this about Hezbollah, that was pretty surprising to me. Are they decoupling from Iran?
I don't think they're decoupling from Iran. And also the Lebanese army actually told Hezbollah that they cannot just unilaterally start hitting Israel. So I think that's a very big thing. And then also in Iraq, which is also interesting, because you have this very large pro-Iranian backed popular mobilization forces. They also stayed quite silent until now. And even the Iraqi prime minister recently met with US embassy officials and the head of the US-led coalition. So we have to see like how these proxies are going to respond, because of course an Iranian response are going to be much more powerful if the Iranian-backed groups in the region, if they support them, for instance, with drone capabilities and etc. And there has also been already some rumors that some drones have been launched from Iraq. But I think it's quite interesting in Lebanon that Hezbollah is trying to sort of stay sort of like out of this current conflict, it seems, because they already lost all of their leadership, so they have to be a bit careful. And also they are very much under pressure in Lebanon itself. But I must say that I'm not an expert on Lebanon anyway. But it's interesting that so far it's quite silent from many of the Iranian-backed groups. And we have to also see there's also some talks that maybe there's going to be a protest in front of the U.S. embassy in Baghdad by pro-Iranian backed groups in Iraq. So we have to see how these proxies are going to respond. And also, I think Israel maybe is hoping for an internal implosion of that there's going to be sort of an Iranian uprising against the regime. But if that's going to happen or not, it remains to be seen, basically. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mario,
Maral,
Night.
I'll go, Brian, I'll go to you right after. Yeah, just right after Maral, if that's okay, Brian, because she hasn't spoken yet, and I think Piotr's still with us, so I'll go to Piotr after. If that's okay, Brian. Maral, just on that same question as well. And also, I would love some comments on Hezbollah, distancing themselves from this. You've got Iran still the strongest proxy, saying they will not retaliate to this attack. That's not expected.
No, and I'm not an expert on Hezbollah, but I feel like I have to explain a bit more about the representations, the different representations of Iran, because it feels like the typically mass media would like to present, and it's not just about Iran, excuse me, any country one way or another. I think the key to understanding everything that goes on, and I see this reflected in this panel as well, is to understand that it's layered. There is not one segment of population or the other. It's not that the people of Iran all hate this regime or all love it, all stand with Israel or all don't. It's quite layered. Same goes with its Iran's intentions, and so does Israel. So what do I mean by this? And even in the, you just mentioned Reza Pahlavi as the supposed leader of the opposition. I can tell you, as someone who has been studying this, observing it, and living it for a couple of decades at least, that he is not. I mean, he is the most convenient available figurehead out there, yet try as he might, he has not been able to get more than 100 people on the streets. In 2022, during the Women Life Freedom, let's remember who got the strikes and the movement started. It was the Kurdish leaders in Kurdistan. That's how it started, with, as it mostly starts in Iran, these movements, they start in Kurdistan, and with the strikes, with the calling of people to come to the streets, and so on and so forth. And now, I'm not suggesting that, again, layered. I'm not suggesting that the Kurdish groups are the only available emancipatory forces in Iran. At some point, though emancipatory might not be the best word for them, but there were also reformers that could call people to the streets. My point here is Reza Pahlavi might be a lot of things, but he's a very convenient and also visible leader, also preferred by the state of Israel, at least the current government in Israel. However, it is extremely unlikely for him to be able to rule. Why do I say this? Because, yes, absolutely, there are some people in Iran that would like to see the previous regime back. Why they would like to see it come back is very complex, and whether or not it's practical, again, that's another story. I don't think that's not the focus of this debate.
But Maral, just on that, this question around something you said earlier. But are you implying that the opposition force, or whoever the leader is not enough for a regime change, no matter how deep Israel strikes? And that could lead to another question: could the strike lead to more nationalistic movement, nationalistic feeling, and more support for the regime rather than the opposite?
Very good question. So the problem with the opposition is it doesn't truly have a leader. a lot of people out there, including Pahlavis, including the left, including the right, including the Kurdish groups that I just mentioned, would like to assume leadership. But one of the problems with exile and with authoritarian states is they dismantle any kind of opposition and sow discord. It's the demands of these different groups, their grievances are so vastly different, and solidarity has not been able to. There has not been much solidarity. One of the works that people like me do is try to kind of find the middle ground between the different groups. So no, to make it short, no, I don't think, in my opinion, there is no clear leader of the opposition. It's not like Khomeini, in 79. And
Understood.
you had a second part of your question was very interesting. However, I can't remember it.
Before going to this, yeah, go ahead. I'll let you comment, because I want to, before moving to the second part, unless you do want to comment on that quickly, because I wanted to continue on your point on the weakness of the opposition, the opposition to the regime. Piotr, I'd love you to comment on that point made by Maral, and feel free to go back and forth, everyone, because I think everyone's spoken now. But also another question for you, Piotr, is, you and Stefano have hosted a lot of these spaces and shows on Iran for the last 2 years. Your initial thoughts in general on the attack, the severity of the attack compared to your expectations, and what that means geopolitically as well.
Yeah, thanks, Mario. I think that the rate of the attack is pretty mad, considering last year we saw the first time that these two have actually struck each other, right? That was the event that everyone in the Middle East has been fearing for years, right? Decades, and it finally happened. And the Israelis largely, well, completely outshone the Islamic Republic. They didn't have a response, and I don't think the Iranians have ever been more weak than they have been now, with the loss of the Shia Crescent, Hezbollah, but then also Syria. I think if Syria hadn't fallen of its own regard and Bashar al-Assad disappearing, then Iran might have been able to sort of, replenish some of its presence in the region. But that has been an even bigger blowback for the Iranians. And so now I think the Israelis have clearly seen Trump coming into office. This has been something that they're planning for ages. And they decide, I agree with whoever it said, this might have been a bit of a smokescreen thing between Trump and Netanyahu, right? And also with everything going on with Gaza. We have to keep this in the broader geostrategic context. Israel's operations in Gaza, whether you agree with them or not, are reshaping things at an unprecedented level. And, there's discussion, I think, in Europe that the French and some others might be about to recognize Palestine officially. And so the Israelis are trying to move fast to sort of preempt any reaction from the Islamic Republic. Now, what this illustrates also is that the Islamic Republic does not have the ability to retaliate. They don't have as much capacity as they like to say they do. Now, one of the big considerations is, do they have an actual weapon of a nuclear variety that they could use? There's a difference between having a bomb and being able to deliver it. One of the biggest debates that I've had with people in Washington in the past, or whoever I've chatted with, is that, do they have the technological know-how in delivery systems? And there's a lot of skepticism around that. So personally, I think the attack has been mad. It's definitely not over. Tonight, I think, will probably be something else from the Iranians. But if they're just sending more drones and ballistic missiles, then we know that they don't really have the capacity to do anything else. And as I think it was Netanyahu himself or some other senior figure said, this demonstrates that maybe they won't remain the existential threat to the Israelis that they have been foreseen for decades. And it then brings us to your other question, was about sort of, what could be the situation on the ground and all the time. When Mahsa Amini and when the revolution or whatever efforts to rebel were undergoing, we like to believe that it was finally time for the Islamic Republic to disappear, but they have been very resilient. But if you're seeing the sort of parts of the octopus, the tentacles, this analogy they like to use in foreign policy, if you're seeing those tentacles being cut off at such a high level, then this may galvanize people within the country to really band together. And if the Iranians don't have their military complex, let alone the sort of grassroots ability to control the people, then a sort of bottom-up approach from people on the ground really could topple the regime. I want to see what Khamenei has to say. Not Khamenei. I want to see what has to say. The supreme leader has to say, and the prime minister. Right? Where are the president? Where are these guys? They're muted. So a lot more to come, I think, over the weekend. But I'll pass it back to you. Cheers.
Yo, just a
Can I add
question. I'll
something?
let you comment.
Yeah.
Of course, I'll let you add on it, and I'll add a question to it as well. Israel said that this attack's not finished. I'm trying to find the exact quote of what they said. Does that mean that we're going to see continued Israeli attacks, even if Iran does not retaliate beyond just a few drones? Because Israel's chief of staff said we're at a point of no return. And then we've got Israeli military spokesperson said we will continue operating until the war's objectives are reached. We know they're preparing for a response and to fire at us. And of course, Trump just a few hours ago said we gave them a chance and they didn't take it. They got hit hard, very hard. They got hit about as hard as you're going to get hit, and there's more to come, a lot more. What does that mean?
Yep. Okay, so this is going to go on probably for up to 2 weeks, like you stated earlier on. That is correct. The reason is because we're at the point beyond no return. Even the IAEA came out unanimously saying that they've obviously went all out now trying to get 10 nukes, and we have no idea when they're going to get there. So Israel needs to do, we started ripping off the Band-Aid. Unfortunately, it's like someone stated earlier, Israel has to go do it in waves. It's on like 2,000 kilometers. You got to fly there, refuel on the way, come back, maybe refuel on the way back, put in new munitions, refuel while they're at base, and then go again. So yes, it's going to take time. If Israel had, as an example, aircraft carriers, this might happen much, much, much faster as an example, but we don't. And America isn't helping, at least directly, as far as we know. So in the attacks. So yes, it will take a while, because at the very first, we need to get the most important people at the top. What's going to happen now is they're going to promote people quickly. Among them are Mossad spies. Mossad spies are well throughout Iran and the Iranian government, and they're going to elevate them. I want to ask them about, Peter said something that was interesting I want to elaborate on. He said that the Iranians talk a bigger game than they actually act on. This is the same thing you mentioned earlier about how come Hezbollah isn't backing Iran. If you remember, after October 7th, Hezbollah didn't back up Hamas. And then when things happened with Hezbollah, Iran didn't back up Hezbollah. And now when things are happening with Iran, Hezbollah is not backing out Iran. Even Houthis aren't even doing anything. So I think what you're finding out is it's a whole shell game. If you go back to the Independence War and also the Six-Day War, one of the most fascinating things that the Arab armies lied to each other to pretend that they're doing much better against Israel, right? I'm in Israel right now. So that is the strategy. Saudi Arabia, a few hours ago, said they reject and they condemn the Israeli airstrikes. Meanwhile, they let us use their airspace. They were using their technology. We're using their communications, and they're helping us in front, in the back, but in the front for face. A regular thing happens is that you get lied to try to manipulate people, and that's what they try to do. That's what Israel's enemies have always done since the Independence War, even before. That's what's happening today in Saudi Arabia. That's why you're not hearing any Hezbollah backing up Iran. And so understand that when people come out, they spew a bunch of bullshit. It's mostly lies. But in the real world, when they talk with this brouhaha, and then when push comes to shove, it's clear who's in charge of the Middle East, and it's Israel.
Okay, so
Mario, if I may,
go ahead,
I would
Mario,
like
yes.
to. There are a few points that I would like to comment on. Just to go back a little bit, you mentioned earlier that the lion, or sheer in Persian, is the symbol of the previous regime. The lion is actually a prehistorical symbol of masculine symbol of resistance in Iran. It goes way before the Pahlavis, way before the past few hundred years. So that's for that. But as for regime change in Iran, I believe it is both Iran and Israel. They're more similar states than they would like to admit, either one of them, and both need each other. I know this is not a popular opinion, but they both need.
So who needs each other? You think Iran and Israel?
Iran and Israel, the states. I'm talking about the governments, not the people. They both need each other because each holds the other responsible for all the domestic repression. That's for that. It's very important for Iran to have Israel as the regional enemy, to have the United States as the regional enemy, because one of the actual words that the supreme leader perhaps repeats more than any other is enemy. The word enemy. Same goes for Israel, pretty much. So it's the rhetoric. They have to keep the rhetoric up to kind of justify the domestic oppression. And why do I bring that up? Because one of the things that falls through the cracks at the moment is the domestic repression that is going to go on in Iran right now. Typically, at times like this, where there is external pressure, and obviously the Iranian regime cannot really stand up to both Israeli and U.S. Forces all at the same time. And let's not forget, this is a regime that has always been a temporary regime. Since day one, one of the most common phrases in Persian is "When will they go?" So it's always been that. So they're always afraid of. And they don't have a very large. They do have a support base in Iran, but not as large as they used to. So at times like this, when they're being threatened, the government is being threatened by external forces. They have to increase pressure on domestic dissent. So we will see in the next few weeks and months far more executions. We will see far more pressure on the somewhat, in certain areas, loosened rules and laws on hijab and the morality police and all that. And these are all important from a humanitarian and human rights perspective. And these are
on that point. On that, I'm going to go to Cameron, and then afterwards, Stefano. I know you have breaking news, and after Cameron, I also want to have a military discussion with Vladimir, Stefano, Yoel, and Amir, just to understand the military capabilities of Iran relative to Israel. Stefano, I would love to get the breaking news. And we'll go to
Cameron. I really want Amir to speak just quickly. In anticipation, Israel is doing this. Israel already is calling up reservists because of the operation in Iran. So we are starting to see that. We historically see that when Israel prepares major operations or in anticipation of a major operation or immediately after. This is a standard procedure. But Israel is now calling up reservists. That's just the news that I wanted to share for here. Please go to Amir.
I appreciate it. Yeah, I'll go to Amir right after Cameron. I know you don't have much time, and Amir, we're going to be discussing this for a while. You're a regular guest on our spaces. Cameron, I'd love to get your thoughts on that last question that I was asking Maral and other guests. And that's, as the head of the National Union for Democracy in Iran, what is the threat now to the regime? And is Israel's goal with this to topple the regime? I'd love to get your thoughts on that question, but also on the attack in general.
Sure. Very good to be with you, Mario, and with your the other panelists. This has been a strategic, but also a psychological defeat for Ali Khamenei, who has been the dictator of Iran for more than 30 years. He's never faced something like this. So let's talk first strategically and operationally, and then psychologically and mentally, I think, for the dictator. So first of all, the fact that in one day, in what they thought was the comfort of their own homes, the head of the IRGC, Hossein Salami, the head of the regime's armed forces, Bagheri, the head of the IRGC Air Force, Hajizadeh, a critical personal advisor and political advisor to the Supreme Leader, Ali Shamkhani, were all eliminated. That's a significant move to decapitate the Islamic Republic's strategic and operational capacity. I mean, if this had simply been a strike on the nuclear facilities or other facilities and individuals were not specifically targeted, these four men, plus the others who were eliminated, would have been four of the key players in the room, advising, directing the regime's response, personally advising and directing the Supreme Leader as to what should be done. So just simply operationally, I mean, you have four of the really heavy hitters who would normally be in any of those rooms, any of the secret hidden bunkers that the Supreme Leader flees to go to when he leaves his people without air warnings or sirens to tell them when potential strikes are incoming. He's in comfort and safety along with these four. Those four individuals are no longer there, along with many of their deputies and obviously many of the so-called scientists who are trying to build nuclear bombs for the Islamic Republic. So operationally, it's a significant defeat. But speaking of those four people, that's an even greater psychological defeat. The way that you rise through the ranks of the armed forces in Iran under the Islamic Republic is not really similar to how one rises through the ranks of the armed forces in any country in the world. I mean, even in dictatorships or totalitarian states or authoritarian states, let's say China, let's say Russia under Putin, or any other country. What you rise based on is not your strategic depth or your capacity for military strategy necessarily. What you rise based on is your loyalty to the Islamic Republic and your loyalty to Ali Khamenei himself. And the fact that four of these men who were close personal confidants of the supreme leader were in the comfort of their lavish luxury apartments across Tehran, were eliminated simultaneously. That's a huge, not only psychological defeat for the supreme leader, but it's a humiliation. The fact that he has spent so much time saying that he's defending his regime and defending the country, he's unable to defend even his four closest people. And they were killed as they slept in their beds in luxury apartments in the best parts of Tehran in money that they've stolen from the people of Iran. So that is a huge psychological defeat. The supreme leader feels at this moment, I would imagine, not only very scared, very afraid, but humiliated. How is this possible? And as it was pointed out previously, where is the supreme leader? Where is indeed Mr. Pezeshkian? Both of them are still hiding because they're worried that they'll be next. So not only is this operationally devastating for the Islamic Republic, psychologically and mentally, it is a huge blow to the infrastructure.
But do you think, Cameron, do you think the opposition has enough? Mara was talking earlier, there is no real leader of the opposition. We talk about the prince earlier. He can't even get enough people on the streets when he tries. Do you agree with that position that Mara has? And if so, is there enough for a regime change in Iran?
I don't agree, but I think that the time to settle those disputes or differences as to who will be the future leader is not now. That will be the ballot box that the Iranian people should have the right to go to decide their future leaders. We shouldn't be disputing that now. And I don't think that it's the case, specifically when it comes to Prince Reza Pahlavi. He calls people and they don't come. He's not calling people to come and chant his own name. If and when people do that, they do it spontaneously, as we saw them do it over the Nowruz holiday. But that's not our issue here. I think that the opposition to the people of Iran, to the Islamic Republic, are first and foremost the people of Iran. The vast majority of people in the country who are opposed to this clerical regime, they may have some ideological differences. Some may prefer monarchy, some may prefer republic, some may be left-leaning, right-leaning. But when it comes to being opposed to Ali Khamenei, when it comes to their murderers and oppressors like Hossein Salami, who frankly is an embarrassment to represent Iran, who used to have one of the most impressive militaries in the world, with generals and commanders and admirals who looked as if they should be running the entire world's armed forces. You have people like Salami, who it's an embarrassment. It's an embarrassment to an amazing and beautiful country like Iran. And so all Iranians can agree that the country and that the world is better off with people like Hossein Salami not being there, with people like Ali Shamkhani, who did nothing but steal and plunder the Iranian people's wealth, not being there. So I think the time for those disputes will be down the road. I think what this presents is an opportunity, and I think we'll see that in the coming days, weeks, and months for Iranians to have a more even playing field against this regime. The Islamic Republic has been weakened, and opportunities will arise for Iranians to take advantage of that.
So we're going to go to Amir. I'm going to go to you first, but then we're going to have a military discussion, as I said earlier, between Stefano, Yoel, and Vladimir. Cameron, it's a pleasure to have you. I appreciate you joining today and giving us that take.
Thank you.
Amir, I'm sure you strongly disagree with Cameron, maybe to an extent, Maral. First, your initial reaction, like Stefano, like Piotr, like Yoel, and like Vladimir, you've been on our spaces multiple times for like 2 years now. And we've seen this evolve. I want to get your initial reaction to what we've seen. I think you were in Tehran when these strikes were happening, Amir. You look okay, so I hope your family's okay. Can you give us your initial take on what we've seen so far? And what does that mean for the Iranian regime? Amir, are you there? I think Amir is having internet connection issues. So I'm going to go to until Amir is back. Stefano, back to you. You've given us deep analysis over the last couple of years of every attack we've seen, whether it's Gaza, whether it's Hezbollah, or the attack on Iran and Israel in 2024. Your thoughts on the severity of this attack, but more importantly, what's next?
Yeah, so I want to make this clear. I think people are putting too much focus on this idea that these strikes were intended to do a regime change. I do not believe that that's the intent. That is not what Israel did. What Israel was doing is targeting the command and control to enable confusion within the Iranian military to prevent a retaliatory strike immediately. If you look at the key figures that were targeted, a lot of the people there that were targeted are directly tied into the specific aspect of Iranian's retaliatory capability. If they wanted to do regime change, we would see not only more attacks on, let's say, the political landscape and the political leadership, much more than we see now, but areas that I would be looking at is the Iranian ground forces, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps ground forces, the Basij militia, even in some extent the Araghchi as well, right? That would indicate that that's an intent of regime change. The strikes we're seeing now is for preventing Iran to do a retaliatory strike. Even the key political leaders like the Supreme National Security Council president, that was the key advisor to Khamenei, he's very key in the national security apparatus of Iran. So that's where I think a lot of the confusion is going on and what's happening. I mean, I know we can go into the military conversation. I did see some of the speakers come back. I know Amir, he had some issues with internet connection. So I'll pause there and carry on the military.
Yeah, of course. And we've got Noya as well. So I think Noya will join you, Yol and Vladimir in that military conversation. Amir, you heard what Maral and Cameron said earlier. First, as I'm not sure if you heard me earlier, you seem okay. I hope your family's okay. Make sure you unmute. As someone who's been covering this for a long time, your thoughts, number one. Number two, how's the reaction within Iran? And then what is Iran's capabilities in your opinion?
Thanks, man. I hope my audio is good. What has happened yesterday is a history-changing moment. Israel did something to Iran that has never been done before, and it's a major blow. And the reason that we are seeing a stall in Iran's response is basically the fact that they're surprised, and they came off very shocked. And I think Iran, it is a mistake for them. They negotiated with Trump, and they thought that he can contain Israel to not attack Iran, but that is not the case anymore. And I think to say, just talking about regime change in Iran would be a little bit soon for now, because Iran is much different from Syria and Iraq and Lebanon. It's another different case. I know the damage is severe, but I'm currently in Tehran. I've seen scenes that I've never seen before in my life. Just 6 kilometers away from my house, a place got targeted, and this is just surreal to see this in Tehran. But my whole
just
point
quickly,
is
Amir,
that,
Amir, I interrupted you just to mention something that Vladimir shared. Vladimir, I really appreciate you. It goes to your point also, so now I'll go back to Amir to continue, and maybe you can comment on this also, Amir. But essentially, Amichai, who's the Israeli Ministry of Diaspora and combating anti-Semitism, posted an image of him and the Prince what's the prince's name? Pahlavi. It is Prince Pahlavi, of course. Prince Pahlavi is shaking hands with Amichai. And then the tweet says, soon in Tehran. Not sure if you've seen this also, so whether that changes your mind. I'll go back to you after Amir, and we've got Noya here as well. But that's a post that maybe supports the argument that Israel is aiming for regime change. But Amir, I'll let you continue. Sorry to interrupt.
I think if the US and Israel are aiming for regime change, they have to be ready for a major, it may be too far, but a major collapse in the region's security dilemma, because, you know, Iran still has the Strait of Hormuz. Iran still has an option to go nuclear, actually, because Israel targeted these sites, but Iran has underground bases and the knowledge is there. So Iran can become nuclear in a matter of weeks if the political decision is made. And I would like to go into the mind of Trump, what he did. I think he is still, at the end of his mind, he's still not looking for regime change, because Iran has a population of 90 million. I'm not saying that people love or hate the regime. I don't want to talk about that. I'm just saying that if that happens, you got trillion-dollar economies like Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Qatar and Iraq and all of Iran's neighbors. Everyone would be damaged from this. Iran won't go down alone. If it goes down, it will bring many others down too. And that is just from a historical point of view. Every time that a major change happened in Iran, we can go back to 1979 when the revolution happened. You see what happened to the global economy after that. I think even the United States is not ready for a regime change in Iran. And I hope Iran will have to strongly retaliate. And I just hope after that we can somehow manage to find a diplomatic resolution between Iran and America. I was very optimistic on this, but what I've seen last night, I still cannot believe my eyes what is happening here in Tehran. But at the end of the day, if the US really relies on regime change in Iran, that may be, I think if they really want to do that, everybody will forget about Iraq and Afghanistan war. This is another different game. I'm not saying Iran is as much as capable as Israel, but a war with Iran, if truly implemented, would be the mother of all wars. I'm not saying that the regime is so big, it's so powerful, but it is not Iraq, it is not Syria, it is not Lebanon. It's a whole different game. And if the retaliation that may take days to happen because the command has been damaged in Iran, but if that happens, then everybody will understand that Iran still has many capabilities. It is damaged like never before. I can agree that, but the probably retaliation operation, the new ballistic missiles, the new drones, that is top notch. Iran's technology on that is very advanced. And I just, at the end of the day, I hope that the US and Israel are not looking for regime change, because that is that would not be good for anyone. Thanks.
Let me ask you a question to Noya and a question to Vladimir. Noya, it seems like every time an attack happens, whether the attack on the Houthis and then the attack on Hezbollah when the leadership got decapitated, I remember those spaces where we say, Israel will not go on a full-blown war with Hezbollah. They cannot afford to do so. And Israel just wiped out Hezbollah in a matter of weeks. And now with Iran, we're seeing a very similar strategy, on even faster than what we've seen with Hezbollah. So my question to you is Israel ready for a full-blown war with Iran? That's number one. Number two, how involved was the US in all this, especially in the decision-making process? Because you've got, obviously, Trump kind of making it seem like he knew about, not he knew about the attack, but he approved the attack earlier on. I'll read out his latest tweet where he says, I gave Iran a chance to make a deal. I told them in the strongest words, just do it. But no matter how hard they tried, no matter how close they got, they just couldn't get it done. I told them it would be much worse than anything they know, anticipated, and they know, anticipated, or were told, and that the US makes the best and most lethal military equipment anywhere in the world by far, and that Israel has a lot of it with much more to come. And he goes on and he says, just do it before it's too late. God bless you all. In terms of Iran reaching a deal with the US. But you've also got Rubio, right after the attack, said, Israel took unilateral action against Iran. We are not involved in strikes against Iran, and our top priority is protecting American forces in the region. Let me be clear, and Iran should not target US interests or personnel. So we've got Rubio here distancing the US, pretty directly, saying it was unilateral, they had no involvement. And you've also got, on the other side, you've got Trump saying, we support Israel. Iran should have listened to me when I said, I gave them, I know if you know, but I gave them 60-day warning, and today's day 61. They should not come to the table. What's your stance on how far, if any, if at all, obviously US was involved, but how far were they involved?
Who are you asking?
That's
me?
That's for Noya. You got to unmute Noya.
Oh, sorry. Was that directed to me? Okay, good. I was hoping it would. Yeah. So first of all, let's look at the logical timeline. I think that not just that Trump knew about it. I'm also 100% positive that the intelligence that Israel had basically, with a big chunk of it, came from the United States. Trump said, "You guys have 60 days. We are at day 61." And there is an attack. There is no secret here. I think the timeline would make perfectly sense. Now, if you look at the media tennis that was happening between the United States and Israel, all the state publication in Washington Journal, all of this was all a part of a very big diversion. If we look at, for example, what it took for Israel to put the entire leadership of the Iranian Air Force in one room and make them stay there so the elimination would have the effect that it had, you would need to release a lot of information, cause this is a very, let's say, Mossad tactic way, okay? You would have to send a lot of confusing information from all direction to even plant some false information over there in order to make them realize that there is some urgency for them to all sit in the same room, so then you can conduct a strike. Mario, this was something that was planned for at least 2 months. And the activity we saw on the ground was something that Mossad had in play for at least a year or two, just like the beeper, you gave it as an example, the beeper operation that we saw in Lebanon. This is something that just laid there for a couple of years. They released a lot of information to cause movement on the ground. And then when the opportunity window arrived, they acted. This was perfectly conducted and coordinated with the United States. And I do believe that Trump is using the threat of Israel right now. He is saying, okay, I will hold them if you come back into the negotiation table. And that would make also perfect sense. I think both sides are interested in an agreement. I think Israel is not interested in an agreement right now. And it will come to a clash of interests at some point. But this is what we see right now. It's still the initial stage.
So Noya, we'll get back to you in a bit. The team will just kind of fix your audio. Vladimir, if you can mute your mic, and I'm going to go to you right after I let you all continue that answer. And I want to go to Vladimir to discuss Iran's proxies and their capabilities and why he thinks Hezbollah distanced themselves. Yoel, just on that same question, because we do have here, there's reports that Trump and Netanyahu had a pretty, pretty tense call in which Trump was telling Netanyahu to act cautiously. So obviously this seems like a leak, and potentially an intentional leak, where Trump's message to Netanyahu is act cautiously, and that this is not the time to escalate the situation. While the US, and obviously, Trump prides himself as the anti-war president, the US trying to reach some sort of diplomatic solution here with Iran. Do you think Israel acted without the US's approval in this?
The United States 100% approved the fact that America also has its eyes, and it's got bases in the Air Force, and it's got, it controls also a lot of the sea. 100% America knew well in advance. I say that with full confidence. There was deception involved. Noya, when she was talking about the Mossad a moment, one of the main things people don't think, it's not about manipulation or spying. It's really about deceiving in order to get your enemy to do what you want while they think they're doing things to counter you. That's the Mossad strengths. And that's what we've seen probably with some of the strategy with the Mossad to throw off the Iranians. The head of the Mossad was scheduled to come to fly to America on Friday morning, like an emergency meeting, it was announced. Turns out that was also to throw off Iran, to let them think that they have time, and so that they didn't think that they had to hide their assets, to think, okay, obviously we're going to wait till Iran would wait till after the Israelis return or after the meeting in America for Israel to do a strike. So they thought that they were safe, or at least for the time being. But that was also deception. It's all deception. That's how things work in the Middle East here. You're looking at one thing, but something else is actually happening. When Trump was elected and he said Israel can buy as many weapons as it wants for the war against Hamas, and they talked about all of the things that Israel acquired, anything from D9 bulldozers all the way to kind of to jets. But one of the other things that they did not discuss was Israel bought all of these things to prepare for the Iranian attack. And while the media was focused and obsessed with looking at this hand, talking about Hamas and Gaza, we could do things in Iran. Now, while you're looking at Iran, we would say maybe Israel can finally make more progress on Hamas and to speed up that war so that can finish sooner. I wanted to say something about, you were mentioning earlier, is Israel trying to do regime change? My answer is no, not directly. I think what Israel's trying to do, obviously, take out the threat is priority number one, the nuclear threat. I think what they want is the Iranian people to overthrow them. It's not, I think the Iranians deserve to overthrow their own government, and Israel's trying to do everything that they can so that the Iranians can earn and reclaim their democracy and their freedom. And that would also enable massive changes, not just in Iran, but the Middle East. And obviously, I think we'll be seeing a peace deal between Israel and the Iranian people before maybe even Saudi Arabia when the Iranian government falls. So there's a lot to be excited about.
Yeah, okay, you've made a lot of points here. Just one question. Why do you think Israel's calling up reservists?
Terrific question. I think it's a couple things. I think some people might be there's the straight play, and then there's put on my conspiracy hat. The straight play is you have no idea what's going on. If there's ever a time when you're at an existential war and everyone's and everyone's all in on war right now, both Israel and Iran, then you need your military as prepared as possible, all hands on deck now more than ever. On the other hand, there are a lot of challenges happening in Judea and Samaria and also in the Jordan Valley and Israel's eastern border. And they're calling people up in order to ensure that they can keep things safe and to ensure that Hamas doesn't spring up in Judea and Samaria, as they have a very strong hold there. So even though you may think some of them will be maybe related to Iran, yes, but the majority of those people, I think, are to make sure that we can ensure that everyone has peace, prosperity, and human rights in the land of Israel, Jews and Muslims alike.
Vladimir, I want to go to Hezbollah. Hezbollah put out a statement. I haven't read the statement or the exact wording, but essentially they distanced themselves. They said they will not respond to Israel after the attacks on Iran. That was pretty surprising to me. Do we have a proxy here acting unilaterally without Iran's approval? And could we say that Iran's losing grip on their proxies? Because it seems they're losing potential grip on their own security.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, but I think it's just because Hezbollah is so much under pressure in Lebanon, and also after they lost all their leadership after the Israeli hits. So that's why Hezbollah, they want to rebuild themselves. They know if they're going to get involved now that they're going to get hit again by Israel, and they will not be able to rebuild their leadership and everything. So I think it's also, I don't think Hezbollah is doing this without coordination with Iran. So I don't think it's gonna it means that.
So do you think Iran is okay with Hezbollah not getting involved in this war? You've got Iran's military leadership, including Khamenei's advisor, killed within a day.
Yeah, I think they don't really have a choice because Hezbollah is quite weak now. So I think it's going to be more interesting what they're going to do, for instance, with Iraq and with Yemen, with the Houthis and Hajj al-Shabi in Iraq. Are they going to get involved? Obviously, if Iran wants to have an effective response to this Israeli attack, it would be useful for them to use Hezbollah and also other proxies, also like Hamas. But both Hamas and Hezbollah are very weak at the moment. They also lost Syria. I mean, in the past, they would have been able also to hit Israel from Syria because there were like several groups that were operating there tied to Iran, but most of them are like gone now, and Syria is under control of Sunni-led forces. So I think it's going to be it's a very interesting moment at the moment, and now also the fact that Israel is eliminating the IRGC leadership, it shows that Israel will not stop at anything. So
could Israel strike the Khamenei, the supreme leader as well?
Well, it depends on how much protected he is. I'm sure he's not in a public space, and Israel has claimed they can reach anyone. But they already killed several IRGC people. So even if they cannot get to the supreme leader directly, they can reach people around him, because if you saw that his advisor was severely injured, Shamkhani. But also what is interesting that the U.S. State Department just released a statement to U.S. citizens that in Iraq they should be careful because there's probably indications there will be missiles, drones, and rockets flying over Iraqi airspace. So this is also maybe an indication that the U.S. State Department is expecting Iran to respond soon. And there's a big possibility that tonight something will happen this night, and that something will happen what also happened in the past.
Okay, so this just came out, and I'm going to go to Noya, Stefano on this one, and Yoel. I'm going to go back and forth, as well as obviously Vladimir. Noya, you can go first. It just came out now. Israel's UN envoy says operations will continue until all Iranian threats are neutralized. The timeline is uncertain, with no clear end in sight for the campaign. So earlier they said it's a 2-week campaign. Now they're saying it's no end in sight. The IDF calls this a critical moment where action is mandatory, not optional.
So I hope you guys can hear me better now.
Yes.
Okay, great. So time, of course, is a very major factor when it comes to the Middle East. I think the statements that were coming out in the beginning were that Israel has set plan up to 2 weeks. And I think they kind of regret releasing this statement, because now they felt like, okay, so the Iranian regime can basically pull the time for the next 2 weeks and then it's over. And I think now they're trying to do a little bit of a damage control. Of course, no one can predict how long is it going to go, but the target bank and the timeline of the Israeli military and the Air Force is set for the next 2 weeks. So I think that probably came out of Washington. and from the White House or CENTCOM to try to sort of not giving the Iranian regime the feeling that they have now 2 weeks and then it will be just over by itself. Trump is really trying to bring the Iranian regime into the negotiation table. He does not want to wait, not even 2 weeks, and he doesn't want to see this attack going to a full scale, in my opinion. And I think Iran is not interested in that too. So I think this is just damage control at this point. I don't think, Mario, that this is going to be, at least if Israel has to do this whole thing without the United States, I don't think that it's going to continue till forever. This is not Gaza. This is something completely different. And also other nations in the EU will not allow to go without.
I don't know, but when you say other nations will allow, I don't know if Israel's really looking for permission here, because, you know, Stefano, if Israel struck the military leadership, Khamenei's own advisor, the nuclear sites, the air defense systems, they had Mossad cells within Iran, and now they're saying that they'll press on until the threat ends, and with no clear end in sight for the campaign. Stefano, how is that not a full declaration of war?
Oh, I mean, it is. I mean, it's just like, of course it's. I mean, yeah. Like, this is a full declaration of war. Of course it is. I mean, this is, I mean, this is like saying, oh, Russia's not in a full war because it's a special military operation. It's a war. It's a full declaration of war. Look, Israel, again, we need to analyze this from where I'm looking at it and how I'm at it. The targets that we're hitting now, you had the nuclear scientists, obviously that's a nuclear weapons program and all that, and the nuclear program, et cetera, right? So that's one aspect. And then the military leadership, but again, that falls into, this is immediate retaliation. This is an immediate strike to degrade Iran's command and control. It goes back to they want to make it as hard as possible for the Iranians for two things: to hit back at the Israelis, and then two, it's also to enable Israel to have more freedom of operation inside of Iranian airspace. That's why they also went after the leadership of the Iranian Air Defense Units, KHDC. That's the acronym of the Air Defense Unit. That's why they went after them. Because that's now why we're seeing Israeli drones flying over Tabriz. I mean, it's kind of insane that you see Iran with all these advanced air defense equipment, S-300s, all you name it, everything they purchased, even though some of them were destroyed previously during an Israeli retaliation for the Iranian ballistic missile strike. But the Israelis have managed to just basically have a lot of freedom of operation, right? And so that's kind of what the Israelis are trying to do, enable this freedom of maneuver to try to retaliate. But again, it's not geared towards, if it is geared towards quote unquote regime change, they're not going to do it only with airstrikes, number one. And number two, they're not hitting the targets that would be necessary for that, right? Not now at this moment. Maybe in the future they can. But what the problem that the Israelis are running into, if they wanted to do such an operation, it's very hard to see it without U.S. involvement. They need the U.S. persistent air coverage. And let's be real, the United States is the only country that can deploy air power anywhere around the world and be active 24/7. The Israelis can't do that. It's just not within the realm of capability, regardless of how significant this operation has been and the success that they've achieved. Now, from the Iranian retaliation perspective, I think people are talking about ballistic missiles, and I think it's important to highlight an important aspect. If you look at all the times Iran has launched ballistic missiles, since the first real big one being against ISIS in Syria, I believe in 2017 or 2018. They did another one against ISIS, and then the Al-Assad air base strike against U.S. after Jules Soleimani, and then the two ones that happened against Israel since October 7th. It took days for the Iranians to get that ready. It wasn't instantaneous, immediate, and something that they can do. It took them time to mount it, right? And what we're seeing is that the Iranians were not prepared for this. They were not prepared. They did not anticipate this to happen. The Israelis took the opportunity. And that's why I think what the targets that the Israelis are also doing is a lot of these missile bases and underground facilities, because they wanted to grade Iranians' ballistic missile programs' ability to reach Israel. Because here's the problem that Iran has. Yes, Iran has the largest ballistic missile program in the Middle East. But the missiles that they have at their disposal that can reach Israel is less than their overall ballistic missile program, right? If you're talking about, let's say, Qatar, if you're talking about UAE, if you're talking about the eastern, around eastern Saudi Arabia, basically almost all of Iranian's ballistic missiles can reach those areas. So a lot of those areas is where U.S. military bases are at. The problem that the Iranians have is they have to use their medium-range ballistic missiles. They're not they have thousands of those, don't get me wrong, but it's not the entirety of their ballistic missile program. So the targets that the Israelis are probably doing is to specifically probably hit those infrastructures that can reach into Israel. You eliminate the command and control, and then you go after them because, again, as I alluded to earlier, since it took days for every time Iran launched a ballistic missile strike, that indicated a lot of the command and control necessary for them to execute that operation, right? And so that's what they're trying to prevent. Now, Iran can conduct retaliation operations, but I think Israel is prepared for a lot of these. And the fact that now they are able to operate in Iranian airspace, they're going to try, and we already see the Israelis release footage of them destroying, what we would call tells or mells, like these areas where they're taking these ballistic missiles with them. That's what they're targeting and they're trying to do. And now they have that air operations, specifically, like I said, in these regions where you would expect the Iranian ballistic missile launches to occur against Israel. And so the other aspect, if I may, the problem that also Iran has is the axis of resistance, Hamas and Hezbollah specifically, have been severely degraded. Specifically Hezbollah. Hezbollah has always been Iran's trump card. That's always been the one thing that they leverage and they can use against Israel. The problem with Hezbollah is that after October 7th, and then really when Israel started to go after Hezbollah, they really degraded the ability of Hezbollah to really threaten Israel. And I think that's something Israel didn't go necessarily into Lebanon to remove Lebanon as a political power into the country. Israel didn't go to try to remove Hezbollah as a political entity inside of Lebanon. What they really wanted to do, and if you look at the areas that they targeted and the personnel they targeted, it was specifically the Ranwan unit, the UAV units, and the rocket unit. Why? Because those are the capabilities they can have to target Israel. That's who they really went after. They destroyed the infrastructure of Hezbollah, but not, again, to remove Hezbollah as a political entity, but its threat. And so now Iran is in a situation where they don't have Hamas, they don't have Hezbollah. The Houthis, although they're a nuisance to Israel, are not going to put Israel in a situation where they're really at critical problem set. And now they got this surprise attack against them, eliminated key military leadership, and now operating in key areas of Iran to prevent a retaliation. And this is where I think Israel is trying to push forward and take the initiative. And the Iranians are just in this very hard position that maybe they might be able to mount a response, but we might have a conversation where the response they launch is not to the degree that we saw the two previous strikes earlier, last year and previously. It's going to be significantly reduced because they've launched 100 UAVs last night against Israel. I don't think any of them really made it, or very few of them made it, because again, you had the Jordanian, the Americans, the French, the British, all of them are like, you're not flying through Iraqi, Jordanian, Syrian airspace. We're going to shoot you down. And then the few that maybe reach Israel, they'll shoot them down. The only capability that Iran has really right now is ballistic missiles and cruise missiles. And that's where you're seeing Israel is really targeting to prevent them from retaliating.
CENK, Stefano mentioned earlier that this is pretty much a declaration of war. The attacks, but also the comments that just came in a few minutes ago. Israel's UN envoy says this operation will continue until all Iranian threats are neutralized, and the timeline is uncertain with no clear end in sight, which is very different to what we've heard earlier, that this is a 2-week campaign. Your initial thoughts on the attacks we saw a few hours ago, and also, is that really a declaration of war? You're muted, by the way, CENK.
Is that me muted? There we go. Okay. Yeah, of course, the declaration of war. It's yet another aggressive war by Israel and their imperial empire. And they feel that they could attack anyone with impunity. And maybe they're right. And maybe that, with America's backing and the West's backing, they could oppress and humiliate and take over any Muslim country they want. I don't know. So in terms of their military capabilities, we've given them $311 billion. So they've got immense military capabilities. Iran doesn't have much, apparently. I don't know. They sounded like they were overhyped, but what'll happen is if after Israel starts this war, which, can we all acknowledge now, Israel started the war, period. Because later,
I'll go against that.
Yeah, of course you will. Later, yeah, okay, whatever. So later, all of American media will pretend poor little Israel had to defend themselves oh my God, poor defenseless, tiny little Israel. I mean, just because they launch all these wars against all their neighbors, occupy their neighbors, oppress them for 58 years, slaughter them whenever they like, if they get counterattacked, they're terrorist Muslims. So that's what we're going to hear in American media. And Israel will do massive propaganda, but they don't even need it because they own Trump, they own Biden, they walk them around like little poodles. And so and you're laughing, because it's true, right? They're like,
I'll respond when you're done. You can
look at the bitch Americans we control like dogs, right?
That's exactly right. Can I respond, CENK?
Yeah, that sounds right, because that is what Israel thinks. So they're going to walk this around and hold on, let me finish. And the next thing they're going to do is, can you believe Iran? It counterattacked those terrorists. More money. Give me more money. America, you owe me. You owe me. $311 billion is not enough. Give me another $300 billion. You owe me for all the wars that I start for self-defense. Okay. And so, yeah, that's what's coming next. America's going to get robbed like we always do. And they're going to pretend it's self-defense when we all just saw with our eyes, the whole wide world, Israel started this war. I think what's interesting is, did Trump get played? And he's like, he told them not to attack. They did. And then, oops, you're going to look weak because Netanyahu said to you, who the hell do you think you are, Trump? You're nobody. I run this place. So Trump then this morning, he's like, I mean, I knew it. I'm in. Yeah, we struck. Yes. Well, why did your Secretary of State last night say we had nothing to do with it then? So which one is it? Did we have nothing to do with it, or you knew and you're happy about it? Which one?
Which one do you think?
I think he didn't know about it. I think that Netanyahu thinks he's the king of the world and he owns America. So he said, who cares? I'll attack them and I'll make those dogs pay for it. And what difference does it make? I'll give Trump a biscuit. AIPAC will give him money. The Adelsons will give him money. And then he'll serve me just like Biden did, just like Kamala Harris would have, just like every American president has served Israel my entire lifetime. If you're denying this, you're on a different planet. Oh, AIPAC spent the most money on members of Congress in this election cycle. Don't say it. Don't say it. Oh my God. It'll be anti-Semitic to point out a fact, a stone cold fact. And then the hilarious part is, again, mostly mainstream media and of course, Israeli apologists come and go, are you saying that American politicians would be affected by hundreds of millions of dollars that AIPAC has given them? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Unquestionably. So like dogs, like for big pharma and big oil and the banks, everything, like Congress goes, yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Where's the money, sir? I'll start any war you like, sir. And I'll make the Americans, those poor guys in Kansas and Nebraska, barely getting along, getting crushed by corporate rule, barely have enough wages. No, we're going to take money out of your paycheck to pay for all of Israel's wars. And by the way, Israel has paid family leave. You don't have it. They have universal health care. You don't have it. And you owe Israel, our special ally, another $300 billion. We don't owe them anything. Get out of there. Get out of Israel. They should get $0 and do not pay for this war. We didn't ask for this war. MAGA didn't ask for it. The left wing didn't ask for it. Not a single non-Israeli lobbyist asked for this war. So let Israel pay for their own goddamn wars.
Yoel, you started disagreeing when CENK mentioned that Israel started this war. Do you disagree with that statement?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, when one swears for genocide, then we're going to wipe off. Wow, I got one word out. Well done, CENK. So when Iran says that we're going to go genocide and wipe off the Jewish state off the map, I mean, that's already a declaration of war. And then what's funny is that all of you are crying, oh, we need more money. Look at us. You remind me of like Bollywood, the fake actors in Gaza that won the money through U.S. aid and the Democratic Party. I oppose America giving $1 to Israel. I always have, because America giving Israel money and supporting is a way to control Israel, make us do America's dirty work in the Middle East that I do not think Israel should be doing. Israel should be on a playing field, which should be similar, kind of like England, where Israel totally is responsible for her own future, and America shouldn't be involved. America should pursue her best interests. Israel should pursue
Joe, can I give you some breaking news? Oh, just breaking news. Just breaking news.
Welfare. They give you money to control you and your votes. Like the Democrats may do in America, and it's the same thing that the American government does. That they want to control people, they want to control the Middle East without having them to risk their own soldiers. And so what they do is they force Israel.
So there is I've got the breaking news, Yoel and Cenk. The breaking news here, and I'm guessing also that's what you want to mention, Stefano, is that Trump, Israeli officials are now saying to report is that Trump, he's pretended initially that he opposed the war, but privately he gave the
No. I got a different one.
What's yours?
That was earlier today. This one is, and I think this is coming from a report on the New York Times. Iranian sources say General Ismail Ghani, the IRGC Quds Force commander, who's in charge of all the proxies, has been killed in the strikes. So the successor of Soleimani, Ghani, was killed in these strikes, and he's the Quds Force commander. This is coming from the Farnaz Fasihi, the New York Times reporter that covers Iran.
By the way, if Iran killed the same level officers in Israel, everyone in Israel would say, "Oh, terrorism!
Your hypothetical crime doesn't
Israeli generals! Oh my God!
It's not going to happen because Iran's a paper tiger. It's not going to happen anyway because Israel is not going to undermine their own people. Take all the money from the people to oppress them. Iran takes it all on weapons, and they're totally compromised by Israel and the Mossad because so many people hate them. Their own people hate them. And now I know that you're anti-Western because you were complaining about Western support of Israel. And you
anti-Western. The guy who wants to control the West is telling me I'm anti-Western. I love the West, brother. You ain't got nothing to do with the West. I do agree with you. Israel should get $0.
Well, zero, because I don't want America controlling Israel. Because Israel is doing all of America's dirty work right now. I don't want America's dirty work. Why do you think Trump is having Israel do it?
Work. We had
my dirty work.
We had no reason to hate Muslims until Israel.
Genocidal jihadis, people that you support.
Yeah, I don't support them. I don't support any genocide.
Clearly you have.
Including Israeli genocide. The butchering of Gaza.
The West stands with Israel and you oppose
it. Let me guess. You support how Israel butchered Gaza, right? You support killing 70,000
You don't know what I support. You were wrong already about me on aid, about America aid. You don't know anything I support.
All right,
you don't know
what I am.
Tell me how. I'm a 5,000 follower account.
What's wrong about Gaza?
I didn't get money to start my YouTube channel like you did that I needed. I'm building it myself, kind of like Mario did. I'm trying to do a thing. I didn't need that. It's not top down. Talk about taking money. How much money did you take?
From who?
Just a quick question here. On the Axios, I'll let you respond to the allegation quickly.
You don't know shit. Go ahead.
The reports from Axios that Trump gave Israel the green light, does that change things in your perspective? Cenk, and your discussion goes to both of you guys. Does that mean Israel has US's back for a full-blown war with Iran that could go on for weeks, even more than 2 weeks?
Well, look, it's so hard to tell with Trump. Number one, he's a giant flip-flopper, okay? And so sometimes he does the right thing. He tells Israel not to attack. Israel tells him to attack. He says no. I give him credit for that. I give him credit where credit is due, right? Then he turns around and goes, yeah, I was just kidding about being anti-war. I mean, that story is, okay, yeah, I gave him the green light. I don't know if that's true or untrue. But now that he's said it, we're wedded to it. So now we become Israel's dogs again. Now we have to say, okay, now we're going to fight Israel's war. We're going to fund Israel's war. And oh yeah, of course, and then the rhetoric will change. And oh yes, Iran is all mullahs and terrorists and dangerous, and we have to murder them before they did anything. We had to start the war; it was self-defense. So now Trump will be just like Biden, and he'll be just like every American president, where he'll go, Israel, sir, what can I do for you, sir? And that's what he's doing right now. So,
but do you think this could be?
Do you honestly, in general, do you think Trump and Biden have a similar foreign policy or approach to the Middle East? I'm just seriously curious because I have never heard anyone say foreign policy. I think they're far apart and their worldview, regardless of what you think. You really think they're more similar, or you just think Israel controls every president?
Yeah, no, you'll then prepare to be shocked, not just by my opinion, but by a lot of MAGA's opinion, a lot of the left wing's opinion, which is that
I don't care what other people. What's your opinion?
No, you're saying you've never heard it before. I'll speak for a huge portion of the internet. Yes, we think Biden and Trump, while rhetorically saying slightly different things or sometimes very different things about Israel, will do and have done the same exact thing, which is whatever Netanyahu orders them to do.
Biden
that is
had
a
an embargo
stone cold
weapons
fact.
from Israel.
Stone
No,
cold
Biden-
fact.
it was a weapons
Doggy,
embargo.
come here, treat. And
Well,
Biden and Trump
there
both go like
was an
little
embargo.
doggies.
Yeah, that's it. I don't know how you think so lowly of your presidents. It's pretty insane. Whether they're left or they're right.
I do, because
I've
they're
never seen it.
corrupt. And they take money
Sure, yeah.
from drug
Yeah,
companies,
from
from oil
Qatar,
companies,
from your friends in
Israel, from
Qatar. They take money from Qatar.
So
I'm
can
going
I-
to talk about the Qatari money.
So
I
if-
care more than
This
AIPAC
is your
giving money to
claim that
people that
wasn't.
already
I
support it
said Qatar
than
before you
vote
did.
the same as AIPAC.
So if I could jump in quickly just to something where because I think where Joel has a point, and because I understand where Cenk is from, but where I believe Joel actually has a point is, I do believe that this is a scenario where the United States is more than happy to just say, Israel, have at it, right? I do believe that this is a scenario where the United States, both under the Biden administration and the Trump administration, just said, Israel, take care of it, right? And to be honest, right, especially in operations inside of Iran, we're more than happy to say, Israel, all you, have your Mossad. And the issue, but the problem for the Iranians is that the Israeli intelligence apparatus, specifically Mossad, has deeply penetrated Iran's government, military, and intelligence apparatus, full-heartedly all over. And so that also goes to the point of highlighting something that is a weakness within the Iranian regime, is that they do not have an effective counterintelligence apparatus. They do not have an effective intelligence apparatus, because ever since the failures of October 7th from the Israeli perspective, right, when that happened, what we have seen is a cascading effect of which the axis of resistance, starting with Hamas, Hezbollah, and now in Iran, where those main aspects and those main actors that Iran has spent decades and decades and decades building and really leveraging as this kind of deterrent, has been completely gutted. And so now the question is, from the Iranian perspective, and I go, Mario, this I think goes to you, how does Iran respond? Because people are mentioning there is something that Iranians can do, which is the Straits of Hormuz, right? Is trying to shut down the Straits of Hormuz as this idea, and I think that is an option for Iran if they believe the regime is in trouble. One way to see, is the regime, the Iranian regime and the Islamic Republic, at crisis of falling and being overturned, or whatever the term we want to use, one of the areas is the reaction that the Iranian government would have, and where I would be looking at is the Straits of Hormuz, because the problem is that's a Hail Mary last attempt, because at that point you are inviting the United States to intervene. And the problem is, where I think now the Iranians are looking into, is if Israel is able to operate inside of Iran, where they have Israeli drones openly flying over Iranian airspace, which we haven't even talked about how that is going to shatter the image of strength from the Islamic Republic. Like, this hasn't happened since the Iran-Iraq War, right? Let's make this abundantly clear. In the Iran-Iraq War, the Islamic Republic said, we just formed a new government. Saddam Hussein invaded us. The world was against us. Everybody supported Saddam Hussein. We're rallying together. And that was the rallying of flag. We actually did see that during the Iran-Iraq War with the Islamic Republic. And it was a nascent aspect. Now they've been in power for 4 decades, over 5 decades now, right? Over 5 decades, or close to. And so now the problem is that they can't use that anymore. And all the efforts that the Islamic Republic really tried to do to prevent a scenario like this was based out of the axis of resistance. The only ones they have right now really still somewhat in play is the Houthis. But even now, with the capabilities that they have in the Red Sea, have been degraded. They can be a nuisance, but they can't. But again, for international shipping, I think it's important to highlight, you don't really need to effectively do a blockade. Insurance companies freak out with just one missile flying through. That's more than enough. But in the grand scheme of a blockade, really the Houthis are not. The only other actor I would be looking, though, at right now is these Iranian pro-militia groups in Iraq. And so, because there is a U.S. military presence in Iraq, and a smaller one, and really Syria, that's a lot of them have been pulled out. That's maybe where Iran might try to leverage. But again, that's against the United States. And I don't know if the Islamic Republic is really willing to open a front against the United States, considering how Israel's done that. And that's something that we've seen. I think this was a lesson learned from, and I've said this, Mario, before in your spaces. If you look at 2006, the Israeli-Lebanon war, I think how you need to analyze that is the United States Vietnam, right? Because after Vietnam, the U.S. military fundamentally transformed and changed everything, from how we fight, doctrine. We established the U.S. Army Training Command. We developed the land-air concept, and all of that we saw after Vietnam showed in the success of the Gulf War, the first Persian War, right? When the United States decimated Saddam Hussein in a couple of days, really, right? It was a massive success. I think 2006 was Israel's Vietnam. They realized there's enormous problems within not only the IDF, but as a country as a whole, and to confront a situation like this. And now, although October 7th was a surprise and a major failure, when you see how the Israelis were quickly able to respond and to address to the problem set, they were much more successful. And I think this is where one aspect that it needs to be mentioned, and this is after 2006, is Iron Dome. Because now the problem that Iran, and I think these proxies, is they planned and fought as if this was still 2006. Israel put measures in place to prevent that, specifically the Iron Dome, so that their population was not at risk, and it gives them leeway and time to continue to operate. And then the second aspect was an intelligence operation, and really how Israel was able to penetrate Hezbollah, Iran, and I think a lot of that also has to do with the Syrian civil war and Bashar al-Assad. Ever since the Syrian civil war and Hezbollah commitment to there, that opened up the Israelis' ability to penetrate there, penetrated Iran, and slowly from October 7th to now, we've seen this degradation. And I think that's the problem that Iran is, and this goes to the retaliation aspect. They're in a hard place because where they can really hurt and really cause damage would probably require a response from the United States. So long term, they might try to do, for example, we're seeing prices of oil skyrocket. Obviously, that's going to happen. Now, a lot of that is panic Asia. In Asia, generally in the oil market, they panic and they buy quickly. So the question is, can the United States adjust that? Maybe that's something, if this goes long term, that Iran tries to reduce and try to really put pain in the United States. But at the end of the day, they're an oil exporting country as well. And if they're not, and if their country's at war, and that, you have, I believe it's Karg Island, right? Like 90% of Iranian export goes through there. That's an open target. And it goes back to the regime change, why I don't think it is. Because if they really wanted a regime change, just bomb that island, 90% of Iranian oil ceases. Their economy collapses, and we haven't seen that.
And Cenk, before you respond, let me give you some breaking news that's happened while we're speaking, just to kind of highlight how fast things are moving. As you mentioned, Stefano, the leader of the Quds forces, which is a pretty big piece of news, Israel saying he's been targeted and was struck by one of the strikes. Also, Reuters reports that Israel's airstrikes on Iran have led to the collapse of Iran's military chain of command. Also, an Air Force commander said in a letter to service members, quote, "This is a historic campaign to remove an existential threat to Israel and the entire Western world. It is our turn to exert our full power in the air and on the ground." That's according to Channel 13. And lastly, one last comment here that was a piece of news that was mentioned is that we've got Iranian movement of Iranian launch pads has been detected, and Reuters predicts a massive Iranian response within the next few hours. That all came in literally while we're speaking. Cenk, I'd love you to respond to what Stefano's mentioned, but more importantly, I think the important question that everyone's thinking, do you think we are at a full-blown war between Israel and Iran, which Stefano mentioned earlier? And also, what does that mean politically for Trump?
Yeah. So it means he failed, but I'll get back to that in a second. So first of all, I agree with everything Stefano said. So I think that his assessment of Iran's capabilities are correct as far as I can see from other things that I've read and seen. I think Israel has a massive advantage here, and I don't think that it's that. It's partly an accident, partly not, that their only recourse is Strait of Hormuz, which would then affect American interests, because then Israel goes, "Oh, thank you very much. Now I drag America into the war and I make them pay for all of it and maybe fight it if it gets bad." If it doesn't get bad, Israel can handle it on its own. But if it gets really bad, of course they're going to make us fight it. And then they're going to say, "Oh my God, we got attacked. Nobody could have seen it coming after we killed all their top leaders and after we decimated the country and humiliated them and humiliated the entire Middle East. I'm so shocked that we were attacked. Oh my God." Now you have to fund it for the rest of your lives. You have to give Israel another 100 billion, 200 billion. I got
Israel
no
doesn't want
interest.
money.
Okay, it's always about the money,
from
brother.
Israeli perspective, it's not. It's. I didn't say it. You did. Israel had the opportunity. There were discussions decades ago. Should Israel join NATO? Israel rejected joining NATO. I oppose NATO, but that's irrelevant. Thank God. I totally agree. It's bad for everyone. In general, I think NATO needs to be reformed or maybe disbanded. I don't think it's good for anybody. But Israel did, because the Zionist, the Jewish vision is that we are going to be independent. And that is the Israeli position. I'll tell you how Israel became dependent if you want to know it. It's actually fascinating. Just more but it goes to back of it. But it's not that Israel wanted it. It was forced on it in order for Israel to do peace with Egypt and give up the Sinai. Israel was no longer able to launch satellites. Unfortunately, Israel's too narrow. It would have to do it against the orbit, not for it. So part of it, and that prevented a lot of different defense that Israel had. So therefore, America said, in order for you to do peace and give the Sinai to Egypt, that America gave military and financial guarantees. And unfortunately, what that ended up doing, Israel became dependent on it. And so whenever they wanted to, and that's how it all started. It was a huge mistake. God willing, this war walks it back. I know you agree with me that America should not be giving aid to any nation, and especially Israel. And I'm saying this as an Israeli and as a Zionist. I don't want the aid. I want me to be able to do what I want to do. You should be able to do what you want to do. America should do what we want to do. And a lot of times we'll have shared interests, and that's great. And when that is, we'll collaborate. And that's what Trump and maybe Bibi think now. And when we don't, you and I will spit it out, and then we'll see what happens. But I don't think it's really. I think you might be misreading things to think that the amount that Israel receives in aid is like 0.6% of his GDP. And second, we're forced to buy American products, American weapons, which is helping the American military industrial complex. That's what America wants. Israel now cannot build her own weapons to compete against the United States military industrial complex. And that's why America forces Israel to take aid. And it's not aid, American weapons. Yeah, sure.
So first, is it Yoel or Joel?
Yoel.
Yoel.
Okay. Joel is the English of Yoel.
Yeah. So Yoel, if poor Israel is being forced to take American taxpayer money, why is AIPAC spending hundreds of millions of dollars bribing our congressmen?
Sure, I can answer that, or I'll give my opinion. One, AIPAC has nothing to do with Israel. They're American Jews largely. They are, sure. Number two, they give people that already support their same vision. They just give them money to help people get elected.
Yeah,
I think a lot of people give people that already agree with them. Did Qatar just give America Trump a plane for free?
No.
No. Okay.
Qatar wants something in return.
Yeah,
and so does Israel, obviously.
Right. But I'm just saying, in this case, they actually had something aligned. AIPAC has certain values that they wanted the American-Israel partnership to close. Yeah. And let's say there's someone like Ted Cruz who also believes that.
Really?
AIPAC give the money. Yes, that's what
Noel, you really believe that AIPAC?
I just said I did. You can
hold on. I'm just going to repeat it. I just want to be clear. Yeah. AIPAC is giving hundreds of millions of dollars to 87% of Congress and to both to presidents, Democrat and Republican, because look at that, we just happen to agree not to purchase loyalty, to get back $100 billion. They're just doing it out of the goodness of their heart.
Cenk, let me ask you a question, because I know Mario just came back.
I need to go in a couple of minutes.
Yeah, Cenk, let me ask you though a question though. But you said you kind of agreed with this, but then the question that I have is, why not it's the other way around? Like, why is you're saying, okay, yes, AIPAC and all these organizations gives money to Israel, and then the United States gives money to AIPAC gives money to U.S. congressmen, et cetera, elections, we all know this, et cetera. And then what Yoel is saying is, well, America gives us money for, like, the Iron Dome wouldn't exist without the United States.
By the way, I oppose the Iron Dome because strategically it's terrible, because the war would not be where we are now, both Gaza and probably Iran, but definitely Gaza, if Israel didn't have the Iron Dome, because Israel would have responded harsh and properly instead of saying, oh, the whole Israeli population, we're just going to make you go and run to bomb shelters because we have the Iron Dome. And we kept tolerating people shooting missiles, which hurt against, in my opinion, how Israel's perceived geopolitically. It goes against the justice of your own cause if you're not willing to fight back. And Israel didn't, because it built a castle mentality strategy instead of an offensive strategy when it comes to retaliation. I think the Iron Dome has been a strategic mistake for Israel. And it was pushed by Obama for that reason, to cover for Israel so they wouldn't fight back. Obama was behind. Obama was a big supporter. Wasn't behind. He was a big supporter on getting the Iron Dome out in order to buy more time, to have some more bullshit peace. And what it does is it made Hamas stronger. It made this war happen. This whole thing happen because Israel didn't have proper deterrence. It didn't have proper deterrence because it didn't have her own weapons. Because America military industrial complex is forcing it, not letting Israel develop her own weapons and making her buy American weapons. And then they ended up doing an embargo. And then we're also not letting fight our own terms because we have to use the Iron Dome, which costs what, $50,000 to shoot down something that costs a few $100. And it's unsustainable. While everyone like me and my kids have to run to a shelter.
But Cenk, so then why not? But then that's the question, right? Why not view it also from, or the other way around? Whereas now the United States, basically, as I mentioned earlier, just saying to Israel, do our dirty work for us, because the U.S. and Iran have had a shadow war since the Islamic Revolution in 1979. So why not? It's also the other way around.
Yeah. So two things. First of all, I want to thank Mario for putting together a really interesting conversation, because funny enough, I was in favor of Iron Dome, and Yoel apparently was against it. and the reason that I was in favor of Iron Dome was because I believe in protecting innocent civilians. I make no distinction between Israelis and Palestinians or Iranians, right? So I know Israelis think that one Israeli life is worth like 1 million Muslim lives, but
I never said that.
Right.
That's a libel. You just made up a lie. You made up a lie.
Yeah.
It's a conspiracy to think Jews are superior to everyone else. Which
yeah.
And I don't want to think that.
You're doing
That's it. That's
You're
what you
doing
just did.
You're
You
doing
just said Israel thinks their lives is a million
can I
more than
finish?
everyone else.
Can I finish?
Let him finish.
Yeah, go ahead. Continue with the libel.
So October 7th, heartbreaking, 36 Israeli kids die. Just absolutely tragic. I say that's tragic. And then 17,000 dead kids in Gaza, and they don't give a shit at all. And then they go, I can't
revise
believe
those down and revise many of them to be a military adult age men.
Yeah,
Hamas.
Propaganda.
Hamas.
All means Palestinian lives are worthless.
If it's anything, it's less than what Hamas says, because Hamas propagates and lies all the time, which you know.
Whatever. Yoel, can you just let me finish?
Let him finish.
He's saying the same thing over and over.
Yeah, no, I'm not. I'm trying to get to it, right? So I know you think dead Palestinian kids are no big deal. I already got that. Everybody gets that. Everybody gets that, Yoel. Israel doesn't give a shit about Muslims. They love to slaughter them. Wait. Let me just say something.
Let him finish his point, because I want to see if it's why can't he view it from the other way around the United States.
And last thing on Iron Dome is, ironically, I'm not sure I was right anymore, because I like that it protects Israeli civilians, but power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. So now Israel thinks they're invincible, so they're attacking all of their neighbors, and they're slaughtering anyone they like, and they're saying, now we're going to steal Gaza. So it's made them feel like, oh, I have absolute power and I can do whatever the fuck I want. And besides which, I'm going to get my bitch America to pay for it, right? And to authorize it. And so I appreciate that Yoel is saying, fuck that. Stop giving Israel money. Let them, they're a grown-up country. Just go already, okay? And then when you commit monstrous war crimes, hopefully the world can unite against you. Okay, now in terms of, Stefano, you were asking why, like, flip it and do what?
So basically, so it's because you're saying, okay, AIPAC buying Congress.
Yeah.
Right, and then there's like, so Israel, so U.S. is the lapdog of Israel.
Yes,
but then to Joel's point, it's the other way around, and how he views it is, well, the U.S., because of our military, and to his point, Biden did do an embargo, said, hey, we're not giving you any more weapons because we wanted to force a ceasefire. There was time. And so why not, why in your mind, it can't be the other way around, where the United States basically tells Israel, you're doing our dirty work. You're the one who's executing.
I see. I got to bounce in a minute. I just want to maybe say one thing, and I really enjoyed this, Mario.
And maybe we're gonna be wrapping
one thing
it as
I
well.
want to say.
Yeah, I understand. I will give you. Go ahead. I'll give you the final comments, Yoel, Stefano, and then Cenk final comments as well. Go ahead, Yoel.
Sorry, I need to go. People will say, or as Cenk says, you know, if AIPAC is giving money to a politician that they align in the values, they must therefore own them. But he's also saying, but America is giving Israel money, they own us. At least I'm consistent. Yes, America owns and controls Israel. That's the whole point of welfare. That's the whole point of giving money. You say follow the money, which I agree to some extent, and in some ways, every time is different. But America forces Israel to take money. It's welfare so they can control you. So they always come back asking for more, and they need it because they come dependent. I don't want it. What are you talking to me?
Well, go talk to Netanyahu. Go talk to AIPAC.
This is great. AIPAC has nothing to do with Israel, man. It's a bunch of American Jews. The Biden administration.
Come on.
The Biden administration embargo, which you said they were the same as Trump, lie, which Stefano just obviously proved that you're wrong. We all know that. Forced Israel to now onshore a lot of weapons. I think what you're going to find in 5 years, 10 years, God willing, and especially with JD Vance, because I think he definitely supports this, is Israel getting completely off, independent of America. It will be good for Israel, it'll be good for America, and it'll be good for the Middle East. I do need to go. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, Cenk, this was fun. Mario,
I appreciate it.
Only because it's the
Appreciate
Sabbath
it.
is coming in off in a minute.
Yeah, we're going to wrap up as well. We've got an interview coming up in an hour and a half. Cenk, your final thoughts. We've spoken a couple of times
I
since
just
that
want to
war
be
started.
clear. Yeah, I didn't mean good riddance to Yoel. I meant good riddance to Israel taking our money endlessly. So I would be thrilled if Yoel's side in that particular issue won in Israel and said, we don't want any more of your money. We'd like independence. Oh, for Christ's sake, please piss off already. Okay, so now to answer Stefano's question. So, brother, there's two issues with Iran and America, right? So one stretches all the way back to the 1950s when we, overthrow their democratically elected government, and then we install the Shah and go, now give Britain and U.S. cheap oil, otherwise we'll murder you and do another coup and take over your country. So the Iranians get super pissed about that. They do the Iranian Revolution, and then that puts us in a conflict because they took our hostages, right? So I get it. Obviously, from an American perspective there, we're pissed that they took our hostages. But we also have to be cognizant that we started that. And this gets to the main question that Yoel seems to miss, okay, which is that there's a distinction between American politicians and leaders and American people, right? So so the American politicians at the time worked for the oil companies. So they got America in a lot of trouble and started this giant conflict with Iran in the Middle East in order so that our oil companies can make more money, right? For their profit. Did that help the American people? No. It got our embassy raided. It got hostages taken. It's cost us trillions of dollars, this needless conflict, just to please other donors, which were the oil companies, okay, back then. Now, we have a second problem with Iran, which is that Israel wanted to wipe out their 7 enemies. And they explained that in Project for a New American Century, the Neocon Project. And as General Wesley Clark has pointed out, and everybody's pointed out, the neocons on behalf of Israel had 7 countries they wanted to target. They wanted to start with Iraq, and then they wanted to go to, Lebanon and Libya, etc. And they have now attacked every one of those countries, or gotten us to attack every one of those countries. And Iran was last on their list. So now they're saying, okay, America, you need to start this war. Oh, you didn't start it? Okay, then I'll start the war, and now you're going to have to pay for it, okay? So Yoel's talking nonsense. Israel's going to take that money from here to eternity. They'll take another 100 billion. They'll take another 300 billion. They'll have us fight against every enemy they have. In reality, does America at this point and Iran need to be enemies? No. We don't care about Iran. Iran doesn't care about us except for our support of Israel. So we're going and doing the dirty work of Israel all throughout the world. Why do we even have to attack Iraq? Iraq didn't attack us on 9/11. And you know where we got the intelligence that they had weapons of mass destruction? From Israeli intelligence. And at the time, Netanyahu, the same Netanyahu, said Iraq is our #1 enemy. So, okay, look at that. They made us fight their enemy. That wasn't our enemy. Saddam Hussein's a terrible guy, but he used to kill Al-Qaeda. He was opposed to Al-Qaeda. Iran opposed to Al-Qaeda. As you explained earlier, Stefano, they did their biggest missile strikes against ISIS. So we're aligned against Al-Qaeda. We're aligned against ISIS. The only reason we have a beef with Iran now is because Israel is making us have a conflict with them. And Israel has turned the whole Muslim world against America. And
I do need to make a small correction, Cenk, there. It is well known that key leaders of Al-Qaeda are in Iran.
You're saying.
No, they've been there for a long time. The Iranian Islamic Republic has protected key leaders of Al-Qaeda that are in Iran right now. But
they've also been opposed to Al-Qaeda when they thought it was a real threat.
I mean, I don't view Al-Qaeda and ISIS as the same. They're two separate organizations. ISIS came from Al-Qaeda.
Stefano, you acknowledge that if they think it's a threat to their regime, they will attack ISIS, Al-Qaeda, etc. And so right now they think Al-Qaeda is not a threat to Iran because they're so limited in what they could do. And they're trying to use it as in case we need to use it against Israel or whatever. It's totally impotent, right? And then if they didn't need to foster them as an attack against Israel or God forbid America, well, then they would get rid of those guys in a second because they would be potentially just a threat to their regime. So people shouldn't be naive about any of this, right? The Iranian regime are not good guys. They're fundamentalists, they're mullahs, they're not in favor of freedom, etc. and Saddam Hussein was not a good guy. That didn't mean we had to spend trillions of dollars fighting Saddam Hussein, and it doesn't mean we need to spend billions or trillions fighting Iran when we don't like. Why do we need to go fight Peru or Norway or Cambodia? It's super random, and we don't fight those because they're not Israel's enemies. But the minute they're Israel's enemies, all of a sudden we have to fight the war, or we have to finance the war, and we have to give Israel money. And it's not an open question. AIPAC has the word Israel in it. It is totally for the benefit of not America, but for Israel. They have spent hundreds of millions of dollars purchasing American politicians. That is a fact. You can catch feelings over it. You can say, oh, I'm offended that you're stating facts, but that is a fact. And then those politicians have given inflation-adjusted money, $311 billion from the average American who's barely struggling to get by. They've given $311 billion to Israel. Are we going to get it back? Are we getting our $300 billion back? No. They're going to demand, because they're our special ally and they're doing self-defense, they're going to demand another $300 billion and another $300 billion until finally we wake up, right? But for now, Israel views us as giant suckers. What a joke.
Jump in with some breaking. Mario got some more.
Yeah, sure. We'll get up in. Let me say.
Yeah, sorry.
Hold on, Stefano, 2 seconds before you jump in. Cenk, absolute pleasure to have you as always. I'm sure we're going to have you again as this continues to develop over potentially more than 2 weeks. But it's been a pleasure to have you on the show again. Thanks, man.
Thank you, guys. Whether you're right wing or left wing, not a single dollar to Israel. Not $1, not one soldier. It's not our problem. Let them deal with it. Okay, thank you guys.
So I just wanted to share some breaking news.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'll go to you, Stefano.
You can comment on this, but it looks like that the Israel did just strike the Fordo nuclear facility. So to your question,
now?
Yeah,
oh no, that's the news. Did they just strike it now? That's
this is not Natanz. This is not Natanz. This is another nuclear facility. When you were talking about like the nuclear, like which ones, and I said, well, maybe we gotta wait. They're not moving. It looks like right now Fordo nuclear facility. We're getting images in, I guess from Iran that kind of show.
Are the images that the attack happened earlier on that nuclear facility?
No, like right now, like within the last 10 minutes. Yeah. So we were talking earlier about nuclear facilities that were not struck, or one of them just got struck. It could be, yeah.
The operation will go on for longer.
Yeah. So this is kind of breaking right now. Try to get some confirmation.
Yeah. Any thoughts on this? I'm just looking at the news now as well.
Yeah. I mean, to be expected. And I'd love Noya's take, but I think this is what I was talking about earlier. They have these facilities aren't going anywhere, so they probably have higher priority. And then these are one of the things that, as long as there's not air defense there, go ahead, Noya.
Yeah, this is part of the targets bank that Israel have always had since the past 20 years. So it doesn't surprise me at all. Just 20 seconds on the speaker before me, Cenk, what he was saying regarding money being taken from the United States. I would urge him to search how much money the United States government gives to Pakistan, to Iraq, to Lebanon, to the Palestinian Authority, to Egypt. We are talking about $1.3 billion annually for countries in which American flags are being burned on a daily basis. This is not the case with Israel. Israel and America do have military joint ventures like the Iron Dome, but this is to the dollar bringing gain and earn to the United States as well. So this is a very difficult explanation of what he gave. Now, Stefano, I'm sure you will agree with me that launching ballistic missile on another country is a declaration of war according to laws of engagement. So when we're seeing all these ballistic missiles flying rather from Lebanon or from Iran or from Iraq, this is a declaration of war. So we're in a...
Yeah, but I think it's just so quick. So you're talking about the attacks earlier on Israel, correct? Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. So I'll let you keep it unmuted. That's fine. Yeah, but I think this is different. So I think there's always rules of engagement, like we saw earlier between Hezbollah and Israel, those tit for tat. It wasn't a full-blown war. We've seen, earlier attacks back and forth between Israel and Hamas. And now I'm talking before October 7th. And now we've seen between Israel and Iran. In our spaces, we never said, hey, this is a full declaration of war. Wars are tricky. Obviously, you can say, oh, he attacked one place. It's immediate declaration of war. Or you can say, look, certain lines have not been crossed. Israel, rightly or wrongly, did cross all lines yesterday. Obviously, you can make the argument that was needed. Iran was still enriching uranium. and they're building nuclear weapons. I don't think any of us would want to see Iran with nuclear weapons. And then you can make the counter argument that, you know, there were negotiations that were happening on Sunday. Israel should have waited for then before striking Iran. I think both arguments could be made, and they make sense. And it's a good debate to have. But I think, and I think you'd agree with me that the full-blown declaration of war in this case was Israel's attack on Iran, which I think was, even in my opinion, it's a bit, you know, it's too complex to say less warranted, but at least from the outside, if you want to simplify the war, the attack on Hezbollah to decapitate Hezbollah, in my opinion, made more sense because Hezbollah was striking Israel on a daily basis. But in this case, Iran was, you know, kind of pretty limited in their responses to Israel's kind of step back. Hezbollah stopped their attacks. The Houthis' attacks were limited. And Israel made the first stance, first move here. Again, could be strategically necessary considering the enrichment of the uranium. But yeah, just wanted to kind of make that point. I would love to get your take on it.
Sure. The enrichment of the uranium is not the real problem here, Mario. The problem is that they already have all the uranium they need. The thing is that we got intelligence that they are getting closer on assembling the bomb together, which means developing the core and the warheads and everything. This is also about the shelling. And they were approximately, according to assessment, 2 months away from achieving that. Now, I think you would all agree with me, gentlemen, that a nuclear Iran is not just Israel's problem. And if we're talking about Israel just going on its own and doing it, I think also, and I can sign my name on that statement, that the proceeding of the negotiation between the United States and Iran on Sunday was a decoy placed there by the United States. This was a setup from the begin with. So I really see this as a preemptive strikes. And also, I don't know how much you are aware, Mario and Stefano, but the IRGC is trying to operate on Israeli soil on a basis. We have dozens of arrests here, of assassination attempts that we don't talk about in the media, of people that are being paid to do this and that. We have still IRGC extension that is working in the West Bank and also in Jordan, trying to torch the entire Jordanian border. So there is a lot that is happening, and there were a lot of declarations coming out from the IRGC recently regarding destroying the United States and Israel. And this is a regime that also tried to assassinate President Trump 3 times. So,
Allegedly.
I mean, this is happening in a void, allegedly, but this is not happening in a void here. And as you said, Mario, and I will agree with you to finish my point, wars are dirty. There is no right sides in war. War is hell for everybody. And I wish we could all sit down here in your platform and talk to each other or find a way to peace. But unfortunately, that's not the case, because politics is also standing behind it. And there are many forces that we need to understand that are working in the backstage of all of it.
Just quickly, a question there, Stefano. The attack since the Israeli attacks on Iran, it's been calm till the strike, correct?
I mean, there's still been going on. More than likely, it's probably because they're going to increase strikes at night. That's probably
So it has been, just to confirm this. So the calm has been there until this strike. This is
no. There's been reports. I mean, it's kind of, and one of the issues. Maybe I'm just speculating here, right? But I do believe the Iranian Ministry of, I believe it was Communications, issued a statement earlier today saying, you know, there's going to be, we're basically shutting down internet, and there's been a real push by the Iranians to be like, the media, the government to be like, hey, do not post anything on WhatsApp or Telegram. And so they're trying to do this, but we are getting reports of strikes throughout the day. I think a lot of them are just more geographically dispersed, not necessarily just centered on Tehran anymore.
So there's been, just to confirm, there's been strikes on Iran ongoing since the attacks yesterday?
Correct.
Or this morning?
Yes, I've seen it, Karaj. We're seeing Hamadan military air base.
So now, so this is pretty astounding. So right now, Iran is being
Israel has. Let me make this. I think
Israel has a free pass.
They have air at this
with
point,
no resistance.
Like what we're seeing, like this is air dominance. This is the term air dominance. This is Israel. Like what Russia should have got in Ukraine at the initial part of the invasion, where everybody assumed and expected that Russia was going to achieve an air dominance like the U.S. did in Iraq. Israel has gotten it in Iran. I don't know what happened to the Iranian air defense capabilities. I mean, I know some of them were destroyed, but you would expect they still have. The Iranian Air Force is very old. right? So they're not really going to be able to challenge.
They're not able to do anything. They're not able to intercept the
No, they have like old
jets.
F-14s, F-15s. They have some MiG-29s. I think they tried to get Sukhoi 35s. I believe they actually did receive Sukhoi 35s from the Russians, which are more like the 4.5. No, yeah, you jumped in. I believe the Iranians do have the Sukhoi 35, correct?
Yes, but they haven't operated them yet. So they still have this 97 Sukhois. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's kind of the issue we're running into, is that I truly believe that the Israel, I don't think anybody anticipated it was going to be this successful, and I think
again, like how many times we've said this, it's crazy.
Well, because and I think this goes to I think it's the lesson learned was 2006. Even though October 7th was a huge intelligence failure, it was the ability of the Israelis, how they responded, showed a level of, okay, we were able to respond quickly and effectively, and how they did it. And then we saw it with Hezbollah, with the Patriot attack, and now with Iran. What I would leverage, and the historical example I would use in this current conflict and war between Israel and Iran, I would look at it the 6-day war, in which Israel managed to achieve a huge strategic surprise and a strategic success in the first day, and then subsequently just kind of exponentially got better, to the point that the Arabs in the 6-day war had no ability to respond to the Israelis, right? And they just got decimated. And then I think that's what we're getting at. I think October 7th was Yom Kippur, at least the start. And then what the Israelis had to do was respond, and to the point in the Yom Kippur war, like Israel was right out the gates of Cairo. Right. And so at the end of that war, right, so they were able to took a huge loss in the beginning and respond. That was October 7th. But that's within Gaza, that's within with Hamas, and then you have Hezbollah, etc. Now what I'm seeing with Iran and how the Israelis are operating, and look, I mean, that's why I have my other computer here. I'm just scrolling through everything to look. They have air dominance, and it's giving me reminiscence. It's just, saying this looks like the 6-day war to me from an Israeli perspective.
Yeah, so we just got Trump just a few minutes ago said, according to Reuters, Trump tells Reuters it's unclear if Iran even has nuclear program after Israel strikes. Says the US knew everything, and he tried to save Iran humiliation and death. But on the first point, do you think it's true that Israel could have just completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program by now, or about to?
I mean, I would have said I didn't think I mean, it's kind of hard because, I mean, they have air dominance. I mean, they could just
that's what I mean. Like, they just keep bombing it. They keep bombing it and bombing it until there's no audio on your end, Noya, but there's no, your audio's not working. So they just keep bombing those nuclear facilities. They've got complete air dominance. Why isn't it destroyed? Noya, you can try to answer again if your audio works.
Yeah, go ahead.
Most of the really significant and delicate facilities of the nuclear facilities of Iran are underground. So it means that you will need an air structure of dropping the same weight of bombs one after the other in the same precise point, just to penetrate the ground. So this is a little bit more complex from what we're seeing right now. What we're seeing right now, if you look at the correlation of the targets, it's basically ballistic launchers versus uranium enrichment facilities, but Israel is only attacking what is above ground right now. We still haven't managed to penetrate the real low layers in which you would need really heavy bunker busters. So we're not there yet.
Sorry, I cut you off. Sorry.
I believe that we are still waiting on some sort of signal from Washington in order to do the air activity that I was just describing.
What can you describe the air activity again? I just don't know what's left.
Well, again, there is a lot left. First of all, there is a lot of nuclear facilities, whether it's Perchin, whether it's next to Shiraz, that's still only being scraped above the surface. And again, to get into those facilities, you will need much more airtime, which means much more fueling. Don't forget that the pilots that are up there, they are sitting in a cockpit 2,000 miles away from Israel. It's not like they have brakes or anything. They would need to create some sort of an air structure that is going over and over on the same site and penetrating into the depth of it. So, I mean, the Iranians, it's not true that they don't have the capabilities to try to even intercept not the Israeli jets, but to respond. They have ground-to-air missiles, but and they're shooting them. It's just not working because of the air maneuver and the capabilities of the Israeli pilots. So, I mean, it will take much more time and much more.
So we've just got news, Noya, I know you're in New Jersey. So we've just got news here. Ballistic missile launches have been detected from Yemen. And that's according by Ansarullah towards Israel. Also, we've got a fresh round of Israeli airstrikes again against Kermashan in western Iran. So we've
Kermanshah is a key ballistic missile site. That's why they're bombing it. Now, what I would say, the only thing that I kind of want to go with, the U.S. tried to do this in '91, which was called scud hunting, which is basically like you see the launchers, the ballistic launchers, and you try to find them. And that's hard, and Israel's not going to be able to really do that, even with, because they don't even have the like if the U.S. had a hard time in 1991, imagine Israel with less capabilities to try to do it in a country significantly more expansive. What I would say, though, is that's why we're seeing them target not only the military bases, but they're probably trying to target the logistical, the storage sites, the ballistic missile areas where they have it. That's what they're trying to target to really degrade Iran's ability to respond.
So, guys, we just started a space as well. The team just started it 4 or 5 minutes ago. If you have time to jump on there, Stefan, I'm not sure if you've still got energy. It'd be really appreciated. Noya would love you there as well. They just started. If you could join that space, everyone, we're going to be on that space, moving on from the stream as we continue our coverage. Stefano, as always, you're a beast. Thanks for covering. And Noya, thanks a lot for joining. I appreciate it, guys. We'll see you all on the space. Thank you.
Thank you.